Chapter 186. You can't remember? Then let me remind you. You said that everyone should stop when it's appropriate and try not to harm each other's lives. Your Highness, do you need me to explain the meaning of try not to harm each other? Qin Feiyang smiled faintly, but there was a hint of mockery at the corner of his mouth. Fatso, who was outside the arena, could not help but nod and say, "That's right. You didn't say that we had to stop when it's appropriate. What right do you have to disqualify Ling Yunfei?" He added, "Is it because you're the first prince?" There was a cold glint in the first prince's eyes as he said faintly, "You're right, but you can't kill people as you wish." As you wish? I don't agree with that. When those people said that they were going to cripple Ling Yunfei, why didn't you jump out and disqualify them? If your Highness thinks that this is a competition organized by you and that you can do whatever you want, then I don't think there's any need for this competition to continue. Your Highness, it seems that I've offended you. Ling Yunfei, let's go. We've had enough fun. It's time to go back. Qin Feiyang cupped his hands and walked out of the arena without hesitation. Ling Yunfei shook his head and laughed mockingly, then followed him out. Looking at the backs of the two, the first prince's face was almost distorted. All right, just pretend that I didn't say anything. Gather here 8 days later in the morning. Those who are late will be disqualified immediately. He said coldly, then turned and whispered a few words in Shui Yang's ear. Then he led Lin Hao into the palace. It was obvious that he was extremely angry now. Clowns! Qin Feiyang sneered inwardly. He stopped and turned to look at the palace gate, his eyes flickering. Zhao Shuang'er followed Qin Feiyang's gaze and patted him on the shoulder in annoyance. She said unhappily, "What are you looking at? We came all the way here to find you. Are you going to leave us here?" "Find me?" Qin Feiyang was taken aback. He turned his head and looked at the two women in surprise. "What do you think? We don't have the time to visit Yen City." Zhao Shuang'er rolled her eyes at him. "Then why are you here?" Qin Feiyang looked at them in confusion, then chuckled and said, "Could it be that you miss me so much that you came to throw yourself into my arms? I'm a little flattered." The two women looked at each other and gritted their teeth as they looked at him. Ling Yunfei's face twitched uncontrollably. She didn't expect this fellow to have such an indecent side. Cough, cough. Qin Feiyang coughed and smiled. "It's just a joke. Don't take it seriously. You really haven't changed at all. You're still the same bastard." Luo Chenxua rolled her eyes at him and said calmly, "Actually, it was Mother who sent me and Sister Shuang, to testify for you." "Aunt Shui?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. A string in his heart was touched, and he couldn't come back to his senses for a long time. At this moment, Shui Yang walked over and cupped his hands with a smile. "Miss Qingzhu, the first prince invites you to the palace for a chat, and this is Miss Shuang." Luo Qingzhu frowned and said apologetically, "I'm sorry. Please tell him that I still have some private matters to deal with. I'll go and talk to him another day." Shui Yang glanced at Qin Feiyang and smiled. "Okay, I'll tell him the truth." Luo Qingzhu tugged at Qin Feiyang's sleeve. After Qin Feiyang came back to his senses, he glanced at Shui Yang and turned to walk toward Fatso and Shizheng. Ling Yunfei, Luo Qingzhu, and Zhao Shuang quickly followed. "Boss." Fatso came up and said flatteringly, "Are you satisfied with Fat Lord's performance just now?" "Very satisfied. Keep it up." Qin Feiyang nodded and said with a smile. Ling Yunfei put his arm around Fatso's shoulder and said with admiration, "Brother Fatty, I'm not convinced of anything but your mouth. It's too sharp and too awesome. I'm afraid that no one in Yen City will dare to provoke you in the future." Of course, Fat Lord's mouth is tempered thousands of times. If anyone is not convinced, come and fight. Fatso strode forward with his head held high and glanced at the crowd below the square. He had the attitude of a master of words. At this moment, A large number of people fled. See, Fat Lord is not to be trifled with. Fatso looked at Qin Feiyang and the others proudly. Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. The people who were in the limelight today were undoubtedly Ling Yunfei and Fatso. Ling Yunfei would definitely become the brightest star in Yen City in the future. As for Fatso, although his strength was not great, his mouth alone was enough to make anyone tremble in fear. In their hearts, Fatso was probably one of the people who should not be offended. Suddenly, a group of people surrounded them. They stood in front of Qin Feiyang and the others. "What do you want?" Shi Zheng stood in front of Qin Feiyang and looked at them vigilantly. "Elder Shi, don't misunderstand. We are here to thank young Master Jiang," an old man in front hurriedly said. "Young Master Jiang, my father has been suffering from internal injuries all these years. Ordinary healing pills can't cure him at all. Seeing his body getting worse day by day, I thought there was no hope. But a few days ago, I received a supreme healing pill from this fat brother. After taking it back and giving it to him, his internal injuries were healed. Young Master Jiang, you are my father's savior. Please accept my 3 bows." A middle-aged man in tattered clothes walked out of the crowd with tears in his eyes. He knelt on the ground and kowtowed. Qin Feiyang hurriedly ran down and helped him up. He smiled and said, "Big brother, a word of thanks is enough. There is no need for such a big bow." It could be seen that this person's family was not well off. His strength was not strong. He belonged to the lowest class of people in Yen City. To Qin Feiyang, a peak-quality healing pellet was something he could easily refine. However, to this person, it might be an extravagant hope. The middle-aged man was very excited and said, "Young Master Jiang, in fact, we have wanted to thank you in person for a long time, but we never had the chance." "Yes, you are too busy. Young Master Jiang, you are much better than those people from the famous families. You are so young, but your heart is so kind. God will bless you." Yes, good people will definitely be rewarded. Everyone's face was full of grateful smiles. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "Thank you, everyone. I will continue to distribute pills to help more people. Young Master is so kind. The people of Yen City are blessed." Everyone was overjoyed. The middle-aged man said loudly, "Everyone, quiet down and listen to me. Young Master Jiang is very busy. Let's not waste too much of his time. Yes, yes, yes. Everyone move aside and let young Master Jiang pass. Take care, young master. Farewell, young Master Jiang." The people retreated to the side and bowed to send him off. This scene shook the hearts of everyone in the square. Commander Su Shuiyang, the black-armored guards, Shizheng, Luo Qingzhu, and Zhao Shuang were all present. They did not expect the current Qin Feiyang to be so popular. He was afraid that as long as he said a word, half of the people in Yen City would stand on his side. After Qin Feiyang's group left, Shuiyang, Xiefang, and the others looked at each other and quickly turned to enter the palace. In a dazzling hall, the eldest prince sat on the golden throne with his head lowered and said nothing. His face was gloomy as water. Lin Hao stood on the left side of the throne. His face was also ashen. "Greetings, your highness." Shuiyang and the others walked into the hall and bowed. The eldest prince raised his head and looked at them, anger boiling in his heart. Shuiyang's heart trembled as he tactfully walked to Lin Hao's side. Xiefang and the others did not dare to move. They lowered their heads, not daring to look directly at the eldest prince. "What a bunch of useless trash. You can't even force Jiang Haoyan to make a move. What can I expect from you?" The eldest prince's anger finally exploded as he pointed at the 6 and cursed. Xie Fang hurriedly said, "Your Highness, please listen to my explanation." "Explanation? You swore to me that you could kill Jiang Haoyan. But what happened in the end? You can't even kill Ling Yunfei. What else do you have to explain?" The eldest prince suddenly stood up and rushed to Xie Fong, shouting. Xie Fong lowered his head again, his face pale. And you, what did you say in front of me? Ling Yunfei is just a piece of trash, not worth mentioning. And now, tell me, who is the trash? The eldest prince glanced at Wang Xia and the others and sneered. Wang Xia and the others were even more ashamed. They also did not expect that this unknown person was actually so ridiculously strong. The eldest prince glanced coldly at the six and returned to the golden throne. He looked at Shuiyang and said, "Why isn't Luo Qingzhu here?" Shuiyang said, "She said that she has some private matters to deal with and will come to find you another day. But according to my observation, her so-called private matters might be about Jiang Haoyan." Smack! The eldest prince angrily slapped the armrest of the throne. Why was it that no matter where he was or who he met, it was always related to this bastard? There's one more thing. Now, the people of Yen City have a good impression of Jiang Haoyan. Shuiyang recounted the scene he saw in the square in detail. So, he gave out free pills to please the people of Yen City? Lin Hao frowned. It can't be that simple. The eldest prince shook his head. Lin Hao and the others looked at the eldest prince in surprise. Why don't you think that as a peak-grade alchemist with the Martial Imperial Hall as his backing, does he need to please those ordinary people? Moreover, he doesn't seem like a charitable person. There must be some unspeakable secret. Xinchang, have you heard anything from the Martial Imperial Hall? The eldest prince looked at the disciple of the Martial Imperial Hall and asked. Xinchang thought for a moment and shook his head. No. I even went to inquire about it, but even Fatso and Lu Hong, who are closest to Jiang Haoyan, don't know the reason. Even they don't know. The eldest prince and the others were in disbelief. Your Highness, you don't have to worry about this matter. It doesn't matter if he has a purpose. I don't believe that ordinary people can threaten us. Xinchang said with disdain. That's true. The eldest prince nodded and glanced at them. He waved his hand and said, "You guys go back first. I need to think about how to make Jiang Haoyan fall into eternal damnation in the finals." After thinking for a moment, he added, "Also, pay attention to Jiang Haoyan's whereabouts in the next few days." Yes. Shuiyang and the others bowed in response before turning around and leaving with large strides. Only Lin Hao remained behind. Chapter 187. Flying Phoenix House. In a luxurious pavilion, Qin Feiyang and the others gathered together. Zhao Shuang looked at Qin Feiyang with a complicated expression and shook her head. "When I first met you, I really didn't expect you to be a top-grade alchemist." Qin Feiyang picked up his wine glass, sipped it gently and said with a faint smile, "At that time, even I didn't know that I had talent in alchemy." Zhao Shuang said, "In short, your current achievements are really beyond my expectations." Qin Feiyang smiled and asked, "What about you? Is everything going well in Xingyue City?" "Quite well. At that time, I passed the assessment very easily. In less than 2 months, I became a core disciple again. Of course, I have to thank Sister Qingzhu for giving me the Qi gathering pill and letting me use the cultivation room. My cultivation improved by leaps and bounds. A few days ago, I took the top-grade red fireglass pill you gave me, and now I'm barely a 9-star martial master." Zhao Shuang smiled playfully. 9-star martial master. Qin Feiyang and the others looked at each other, their eyes full of disbelief. Zhao Shuang was about the same age as them. She had also broken through to 9-star martial master. How could these men endure it? "You relied on your own efforts, and I relied on the guidance of the law enforcement elder. We can't be compared," Zhao Shuang said modestly. "The law enforcement elder also gave me a lot of guidance." Ling Yunfei smiled bitterly. Qin Feiyang looked at Zhao Shuang, and then at Ling Yunfei. Ling Yunfei had been suppressed since he was young, which delayed his cultivation. Although Zhao Shuang didn't have such an experience, she was just a disciple of a little guy in Iron Ox Town, and her cultivation conditions were not much better. It seemed that the martial arts talent of the two was not much different. He looked at Luo Qingzhu again. She had been a proud daughter of heaven since she was young, and she had been doted on by thousands of people. Her starting point was not much higher than Ling Yunfei's, and her strength should be stronger than theirs. Zhao Shuang joked, Sister Qingzhu's cultivation realm. You'd better not know, so as not to be shocked. So powerful. Stunned, Fatso asked curiously, Tell me about it. 2-star martial ancestor, Zhao Shuang said. Suck. Other than Qin Feiyang, everyone sucked in a cold breath. They guessed that Luo Qingzhu's cultivation was definitely not low. After all, her status was there. But who would have thought that he would be so ridiculously strong? Jiang Haotian, did you suffer a blow? Zhao Shuang giggled. It's all right. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. His heart was not that weak. Furthermore, if it weren't for the fact that he had wasted too much time copying the Huan formula, his current cultivation might have already caught up with Fengling Air. The few of them chatted until midnight before leaving the Flying Phoenix Pavilion. In the following 8 days, Qin Feiyang completely let go of his worries. Sometimes he would go out with Fengling Air to relax, and sometimes he would go shopping with Luo Qingzhu and Zhao Shuang. Don't say it. After a few days, he felt more relaxed than ever. On the night before the finals, Qin Feiyang came to the law enforcement hall alone. What's the matter? In the lounge, Elder Wan sat by the tea table and looked at Qin Feiyang in confusion. Qin Feiyang said, I want to see the hall master. See the hall master? Elder Wan was stunned and asked doubtfully, Why do you want to see him? Qin Feiyang said truthfully, I want to use the hall master's power to open the door of potential. Elder Wan's face twitched and said disdainfully, Kid, don't daydream. Go back and cultivate. Elder, I'm not joking. Qin Feiyang was a little helpless. Indeed, the door of potential was difficult to open, but there was no need to be so disdainful. Elder One was completely frozen. After a long time, he came back to his senses. He got up and walked in front of Qin Feiyang and said with a smile, Haotian, this old man knows that your martial arts talent is not worse than your alchemy talent. But this kind of unrealistic thing, it's better not to delude yourself, okay? Qin Feiyang had a wry smile on his face. He really wanted to tear off his clothes and let Elder One see the potential mark on his chest. However, he couldn't help but have this impulse. He smiled faintly and said, Elder, it's because of this that I have to pursue higher things, so that I won't let down the talent that God has given me. Why are you so stubborn? I'm doing this for your own good. Can't you just listen to me? Elder One was a little angry. Qin Feiyang said, If I don't do it now, I will definitely regret it in the future. But this is unrealistic, do you understand? Elder One blew his beard and glared at him, extremely angry. Qin Feiyang said with a smile, Where there is a will, there is a way. If you don't try, who knows what will happen in the end? Elder, this junior doesn't want to leave any regrets. Please help me. Elder One was physically and mentally exhausted. He could be considered to have seen countless people, but this was the first time he had met such a stubborn kid. Follow me. Looking at Qin Feiyang helplessly, Elder One turned around and walked out. Qin Feiyang was overjoyed and quickly followed. If it was in the imperial capital, there would be no need to go through so much trouble, because in the imperial capital there was a place specially set up to open the door to potential. As long as one met the conditions, they could enter and give it a try. However, there were very few people who could successfully open it, not to mention someone like him, who wanted to break through the limit of this realm every time he reached a new realm. So, he could only go to the palace master for help. The palace master of the Martial Imperial Palace was at least an 8-star war emperor. If he fully released his pressure, it would be enough to give him a strong sense of oppression. Of course, Elder Wan and Elder Ji could do it too. However, Qin Feiyang wanted to be safer. A moment later, Elder Wan led Qin Feiyang to a courtyard. All around, the scenery of the mountains and rivers was pleasant. This was the most secluded corner of the martial imperial palace. It was also the forbidden area of the martial imperial palace. Other than Elder Wan and Elder Ji, no one dared to step in. Elder Wan said loudly, "Palace Master, Jiang Haotian wants to see you. Bring him in." Not long later, a calm voice rang out from the pavilion within the courtyard. When the two of them entered the living room of the pavilion, they saw the martial imperial palace master sitting in front of the tea table with a faint smile on his face. "Greetings, Palace Master." Qin Feiyang cupped his hands and bowed. "What's the matter?" the martial imperial palace master asked doubtfully. "It's like this," Elder Wan simply explained. "Open the door of potential." The martial imperial palace master was extremely surprised. Qin Feiyang was also quite nervous. Boom! All of a sudden, a monstrous pressure roared out from the martial imperial palace master's body. Qin Feiyang immediately felt that the surrounding space seemed to be frozen. He couldn't even move his feet. Even the blood in his body stopped flowing. Time seemed to have stopped at this moment. Gradually, he began to feel suffocated. The veins and blood vessels all over his body were exposed from under his skin. His facial features were almost distorted, making him look somewhat sinister. Fortunately, at this moment, the martial imperial palace master retracted his pressure. Qin Feiyang directly laid on the ground, gasping for breath. On his forehead, there were bean-sized beads of sweat dripping onto the ground. His face was also as pale as paper. The martial imperial palace master said, "How do you feel my pressure?" "Who?" Qin Feiyang let out a long breath, stood up, looked at him, and nodded. "Very strong." One had to know. He was only a 9-star martial master right now. How could he withstand the pressure of an 8-star war emperor? The martial imperial palace master shook his head and said, "Although my pressure is very strong, it is still unable to help you break through the warrior's extreme realm. In the end, it is very likely that you will die under my pressure." Elder Wan nodded and said, "That's right. If this method worked, all the disciples of our martial imperial palace would have already opened the door of potential. So you should give up." No one understood these principles better than Qin Feiyang, because in the past he had tried countless times in the imperial capital, but he had failed every time. But now he was full of confidence. Qin Feiyang cupped his hands and said, "Palace Master, I want to try my best." The martial imperial palace master was stunned. Originally, he thought that after explaining the pros and cons, this kid would give up. He didn't expect that he would insist on doing so. "Old Wan, you were right. This kid has a stubborn temper." He looked at Elder Wan and said helplessly. Elder Wan smiled bitterly. The martial imperial palace master looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "All right, since you won't cry until you enter the coffin, I will fulfill your wish. Are you ready?" Qin Feiyang shook his head and said, "Not now, but tomorrow at the first prince's wedding ceremony." "What? You want to do this at the first prince's wedding ceremony?" The two of them were dumbfounded. Wasn't this clearly trying to steal the first prince's limelight? What the hell was this little bastard thinking in his head? "Kid, you better think carefully. It would be best if you succeed because you will create a miracle and your name will spread throughout the world. But if you fail, not only will you offend the royal family, you will also become the laughingstock of the world." Elder Wan tried his best to persuade him. "I've thought it through." Qin Feiyang clenched his fists and said word by word with determination in his eyes. The two of them looked at each other, and the helplessness in their hearts couldn't be described with words. The martial imperial palace master said, "All right, I'll go crazy with you this time. I hope you can really do it. Also, don't forget your promise with Elder Ji. Promise? Qin Feiyang was stunned. I knew you were going to act shamelessly. Elder Wan stared at him and snorted. Let me remind you. You said that as long as we invite you to join the martial imperial palace tomorrow, you will nod your head and agree. Qin Feiyang slapped his head and nodded. That is indeed the case. Please don't worry. I will not go back on my words. The two of them laughed, because they couldn't think of a reason not to invite him. Qin Feiyang thanked him and turned around to leave. Back at the soothing lake, he stood by the lakeside and looked at the calm surface of the lake. His eyes gradually became sharp. Fatso and Lu Hong walked to his side. Fatso smiled. Boss, tomorrow is the day of the showdown. Are you ready? But even if you fail and live a life of running for your life, we will continue to follow you. Thank you. Qin Feiyang looked at the two of them with a gentle gaze. Fatso said unhappily, Why are you thanking us? Aren't you being too polite? Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled. Your main task tomorrow is to watch Lin Chong. Before I say anything, don't let him come out and cause trouble. No problem. The two of them nodded. At the same time, Wolf King in the ancient castle became excited. Chapter 188. The three of them stood by the lake for the whole night. Apart from the initial conversation, they did not say anything else. The morning sun rose. Everything came back to life. Qin Feiyang looked up at the sky and muttered, I hope everything will go as I wish. He retracted his gaze and looked at Fatso. Call Lin Chong out and get ready to go. Okay. Fatso turned and ran into the attic. After a while, he walked out with Lin Chong. Are you confident? Lin Chong hurried to Qin Feiyang and asked in a low voice. No one is confident in this kind of thing. Qin Feiyang said lightly and walked toward the wooden bridge. Shi Zheng also jumped down from the balcony and followed closely behind him. The square outside the palace. At this moment, the place was decorated with lanterns and colored banners and loud music. There was a red carpet on the ground that led to the center of the square. There were dozens of chairs neatly placed there. Beside each chair was a wooden table that was exquisitely carved. Plates of fragrant and sweet fruits were placed on top of the table. Of course, wine was indispensable. Outside the square, before dawn, there was a sea of people gathered. All around, the palace guards were like javelins. Their bodies were straight and their eyes were sharp. The long spears in their hands were shining with shocking sharpness. Commanders Su and Lin Hao stood at the entrance of the square, welcoming the guests with smiles on their faces. Family Head Chi has arrived. Family Head Li has arrived. Family Head, he has arrived. The first to arrive were the family heads of the major families in Yen City. Beside them were one or two teenagers or young men. After all, this was a good opportunity to curry favor with the eldest prince. Xie Fang and the other 5 had already arrived. They gathered at the side and discussed in low voices. Why isn't Jiang Haoyan here yet? Don't worry, he will come. That's right. All the big shots in Yen City will be here today. He won't miss this good opportunity to perform. In the arena later, I must make him kneel and beg for mercy. A cold light flashed in their eyes. Whoosh! At this moment, a few figures broke through the air and landed in the center of the square. They were Jiang Jingyi, Manager Li, Luo Qingzhu, and Zhao Shuanger. Lin Hao hurriedly stepped forward and cupped his fists. Pavilion Master Jiang, Manager Li, please take a seat. Pavilion Master Jiang nodded. Big shots like him and Manager Li naturally sat in the first row. The patriarchs of the clans who had arrived first also stood up to welcome them. As for the young people, their gazes wandered around Luo Qingzhu and Zhao Shuanger's bodies. They were filled with amazement. A short while later, Ma, Cheng, Jiahe, and Elder He also arrived. Shuiyang, Wang Xia, and Xia Fang immediately ran to their side. Lin Hao walked to Xinchang's side and said in a low voice, Xinchang, what is your Martial Imperial Hall doing? Why isn't he here yet? Just as Xinchang was about to speak, he suddenly raised his head to look at the distant sky and said in a low voice, They're here! Lin Hao looked up. Decisively, several figures streaked across the sky and landed on the square. They were the Martial King Hall's Hall Master, Elder Wan and Elder Ji. Beside him were Qin Feiyang, Feng Ling Ling Yunfei, Fatso, and Shizhang. Greetings to the three lords. Greetings to the Hall Master. Greetings to the two elders. Lin Hao and Xinchang hurriedly ran over and bowed. The Martial King Hall's Hall Master glanced at Xinchang and said indifferently, Although there are some things that I don't object to, sometimes you have to distinguish your own position. Xinchang's body stiffened. It was obvious. He had helped the first prince to deal with Qin Feiyang, which had already caused the Hall Master's dissatisfaction. Lin Hao's eyes flashed slightly as he smiled. Lords, please take a seat. The Martial King Hall's Hall Master turned around and glanced at the people on the seats. He walked straight to Jiang Jingyi's side and deliberately distanced himself from the three heads of the Danwang Hall. Qin Feiyang said in a low voice, Fatso, you guys go outside. Fatso and Lu Hong nodded and led Lin Chang out of the square, standing in the first row of the crowd. Shizhang was also beside the three of them. Qin Feiyang, Ling Yunfei, and Feng Ling turned around and walked behind Elder Wan and the other two, standing side by side. Xinchang hesitated for a moment and also walked over, but no one paid attention to him. They directly treated him as heir, making him feel very awkward. Jiang Jingyi chatted with the Martial King Hall's Hall Master for a while, then turned to look at Qin Feiyang and said with a smile, I heard from my daughter that you guys know each other? Qin Feiyang nodded, managerly smiled, and asked, Brother Jiang, now can you tell us what kind of pill you are going to refine? As soon as these words came out, Qin Feiyang became the focus of attention. Jiang Jingyi was very curious. The Martial King Hall's Hall Master and the other two were very puzzled. The others felt a chill in their hearts as they looked at Qin Feiyang one after another. Their eyes carried a trace of flattery. Ma Cheng and the other two in the Danwang Hall looked a little gloomy. They were all alchemy masters and the leaders of the Danwang Hall. But now, when it came to pills, the first thing that came to everyone's mind was Qin Feiyang, not them. This made them feel very embarrassed, and jealousy rose in their hearts. Qin Feiyang glanced at the crowd, then looked at Manager Li and the others and said with a smile, This is a secret. Manager Li immediately rolled his eyes. However, his words piqued everyone's curiosity. So secretive. Could it be that he had refined some amazing pill again? Everyone pondered in their hearts. It seemed that they had to find a chance to build a relationship with this person. Ling Yunfei walked to Xinchang and whispered, Can you tell us how the first prince is going to deal with us today? I don't know. Xinchang shook his head. Ling Yunfei smiled evilly and said, For him, you don't even care about the friendship of your sect. How can you not know? I don't want to talk nonsense with you. If you have the ability, let's meet in the arena. Xinchang said in a low voice. At this moment, Elder Wan and Elder Ji turned to look at Xinchang. Their eyes were very calm. But Xinchang immediately lowered his head, his heart at a loss. Ling Yunfei lifted the corner of his mouth and pursed a trace of sarcasm. He walked to Qin Feiyang and whispered to Luo Qingzhu and the others, King Yan has arrived. King Yan has arrived. Not long after, accompanied by a loud and clear voice, the King of Yan and the eldest prince walked out of the palace, surrounded by a group of maidservants. Both father and son looked very happy today. The first prince was wearing a brand new golden robe, and a belt embroidered with gold was tied around his waist. He looked particularly energetic. He followed behind King Yan and bowed to everyone one by one. But when he saw Qin Feiyang and Ling Yunfei, a cold light flashed in his eyes. King Yen walked to the front and said with a smile, "Thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedule to attend my son's wedding ceremony. If there is anything that is not satisfactory, please forgive me." Next, it was inevitable for them to be polite. Qin Feiyang had seen too many of such scenes, and he was conflicted from the bottom of his heart. Especially when he saw those hypocritical faces, his heart was full of disgust. The first prince walked to Qin Feiyang and said with a smile, "Brother Jiang, have you finished refining the elixirs?" "Of course." Qin Feiyang smiled, took out a jade box from his arms, and handed it over. The first prince opened it and took a look. There were exactly 5 supreme-grade red fire-glaze elixirs. At the same time, the eyes of the young people of the big families also became scorching hot. Everyone wanted the supreme-grade red fire-glaze elixirs, but few people could afford the high price. The most important thing was, even if they had the money, they might not be able to buy it. Because the quantity was too rare, even the treasure pavilion did not have any stock. The first prince put away the jade box and said with a smile, "Thank you, Brother Jiang. There is one more thing I want to ask, Brother Jiang. Even if Brother Jiang is defeated in the finals, you must come to the royal banquet." "Okay," Qin Feiyang said with a smile. "Then it's settled." The first prince smiled and turned to talk with the young people of the other families. Fengling Heir said, "It seems that he thinks that you will be defeated." Qin Feiyang looked at Xie Fang and the other 6 people and said with a smile, "Then let's wait and see." Zhao Shuang looked around and said, "The groom is here. Why hasn't the bride come yet? I really want to see his appearance now." Although the Zhao family and the Lin family had disputes over interests, they were also good friends. Ling Yunfei shook his head and said, "It's not you who is getting married. Why are you in such a hurry?" Zhao Shuang, I was about to speak. Chirp. But suddenly a loud eagle cry sounded in the sky and spread in all directions. Everyone stopped talking and looked up. They saw a huge iron eagle spreading its wings and soaring from a distance. Seeing the iron eagle, everyone knew who it was, because only the Lin family's mount was an iron eagle. And this iron eagle was the mount of the Lin family's family master, Lin Han. Although Yen City had rules that prohibited flying beast, today was a special day. No one would blame the Lin family for doing this. However, no one noticed it. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed with a cold light. When he was in Iron Ox Town, this iron eagle also chased after him. Woo-woo! With a gust of wind, the iron eagle landed on the square. For people stood on its back. The leader was a red-haired old man. He had his hands behind his back, his eyes were bright, and his whole body exuded a strong aura. Lin Han and Lin Yi stood behind the old man. On the right side of Lin Yi, there was a charming lady. The eldest prince strode over and bowed to the red-haired old man. "Greetings, Senior Lin." The red-haired old man stepped on the ground and said with a smile, "Today is your wedding with Yi. Let's skip these customs. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and take Yi." "Yes, yes." The eldest prince nodded repeatedly and reached out to pull Lin Yi. However, to everyone's surprise, Lin Yi deliberately avoided him and walked down from the iron eagle's back. The smile on the eldest prince's face suddenly froze. Lin Han frowned and said with a smile, "Eldest prince, don't mind her. After all, there are so many people. It's normal for Yi to be shy." The eldest prince regained his smile and nodded. "Uncle is right." He bowed to the lady again. "Greetings, Auntie." The lady smiled and said, "You should change the way you address me later." "Change the way I address you?" Qin Feiyang's eyes turned cold. "I'm afraid this address will never be changed." At the same time, Lin Chong, who was outside the square, clenched his hands together tightly. His face was full of resentment. Originally, the person standing next to Yi at this moment should be him. But now, as her biological father, he could only watch from the sidelines. He hated it. Chapter 189. Fatso pressed his shoulder and whispered, "Behave yourself. If you ruin the boss's plan, even if the boss doesn't kill you, Fat Lord will kill you." Lu Hong whispered, "You don't have to kill him. When his identity is exposed, the first person to kill him will be Lin Han." Hearing this, Lin Chong trembled physically and mentally. He immediately dispelled the thought in his heart. In the square, Lin Yi followed Lin Han and the others, walking along the red carpet towards King Yen. She wore a golden floor-length dress with a headdress like a phoenix coronet on her head. She was less pure and more noble than before. However, there was not the slightest bit of joy on her delicate face. Even that pair of lively eyes seemed a little empty at this moment. She was married, but the person she was going to marry was not him. She really hoped that he could suddenly appear and take her away. She would follow him without hesitation. No matter what hardships she would experience in the future, she was willing to do so. But she knew that this was an extravagant hope. He might have forgotten her. He might have even forgotten that today was the day she got married to another man. Like a walking corpse, she followed Lin Han and bowed to one unfamiliar face after another. Even when she saw her former good friend, Zhao Shuang'er, her eyes were dull. When she passed by Qin Feiyang, she didn't realize that this was the man she wanted to see. Sigh. Zhao Shuang'er sighed secretly. It was obvious how much Lin Yi hated this wedding. However, she who had no status and no strong background could only choose to obey. The world was so cruel. But fortunately, Qin Feiyang came. This wedding was destined to be unsuccessful. Qin Feiyang was also distressed. The original Lin Yi was so simple and kind. But now, these were no longer on her face. He wanted to stand up now and stop this unequal wedding. But reason told him that now was not the time. Ling Yunfei glanced at him and whispered, "I know you love her very much, but don't be impulsive." Qin Feiyang nodded. After a while, after Lin Yi saluted, she followed Lin Han and sat on the main seat. The King of Yen looked at the eldest prince and smiled. "Didn't you organize a competition? Since everyone is here, let's begin." "Yes," the first prince replied respectfully. He got up and strode to the center of the square. He looked around in high spirits. "I believe that everyone has been looking forward to this finals for a long time. I'm the same as everyone else. I'm really looking forward to seeing which young genius will be able to suppress everyone and take the first place. I won't talk about anything else. I'll just talk about the rules of the finals. First, you are not allowed to kill anyone. Second, you are not allowed to use any weapons. Thirdly, during the competition, you are not allowed to take any pills. Anyone who violates the rules will be disqualified. In order to ensure the fairness of the competition, I will personally host the finals. The opponents will be decided by drawing lots. Now, let's invite the 10 participating young geniuses to draw lots." With a wave of his hand, the first prince took out a bamboo tube. There were 10 bamboo sticks in the bamboo tube. Looking at the 10 bamboo sticks, the first prince's eyes flashed. In the meantime, Xia Fang and the other 5 walked out and walked towards the first prince. "Let's go." Qin Feiyang said lightly and led Ling Yunfei over. Luo Qingzhu and Zhao Shuang'er also followed. When the 10 people walked up, the first prince said with a smile, "There's a number on the other end of the bamboo stick. Those who draw 1 and 9 will start the first round. I'll draw first." Xie Fang walked forward and blocked everyone's view. The first prince looked down at the bamboo stick on the left. Xie Fang directly took the bamboo stick. Xie Fang stepped back and Wang Xia followed. Under the first prince's instructions, she also took out a bamboo stick. Then it was Shen Chong and the 3 youths from the Lin family and the royal family. Finally, it was Ling Yunfei, Luo Qingzhu, and Zhao Shuang'er. All of this, Qin Feiyang saw it all. Although he didn't know the actual situation, he could imagine that the first prince would definitely do something. I'd like to see what kind of tricks you can play. He took a step forward, took the last bamboo stick, looked down, and said indifferently, "Number 5, who is the other one?" Me. A teenager from the royal family stood up and looked at him provocatively. Ling Yunfei followed and asked, "Then who is number 1?" Because the bamboo stick in his hand was number 9. In other words, he was the first to appear. "It's me." Shen Chang waved the bamboo stick. The corner of Ling Yunfei's mouth lifted, and he threw away the bamboo slip, saying, "Then let's begin." The others tactfully retreated to the distance. The first prince looked at the two of them and said, "I'll say it again, stop here, begin." As soon as he finished, he took a step back. At the same time, Shin Chang took the lead to rush towards Ling Yunfei, his entire body erupting with a powerful aura, the true qi in his palm gushing out the moment the illusionary palm came out. 9 afterimages flashed in the air, too much for the eye to take in. At this moment, the 3 giants of the martial imperial palace couldn't help but frown. Even if you want to be a lackey, you have to choose the right person. Ling Yunfei laughed sarcastically, stepped on the origin returning steps, and easily dodged the attack of the illusionary palm. "Let me tell you, you won't be arrogant for long." Shin Chang sneered and suddenly took a step forward, quickly approaching Ling Yunfei. His speed was actually twice as fast as before. Ling Yunfei was surprised. Was this an auxiliary martial skill? Surprised? What's even more surprising is yet to come. Shen Chang laughed complacently. His 5 fingers suddenly clenched tightly, and a punch was thrown out. This punch actually carried a faint trace of domineering aura. It was as if an overlord had descended. Overlord fist. Ling Yunfei frowned. Even the overlord fist was taught to this person. The first prince was truly generous. "Now you still dare to say that you're not someone's lackey?" Ling Yunfei sneered. The heart-lock-killing fist suddenly attacked and collided with Shen Chang's fist. Bang! At that moment, the 2 of them retreated. However, Shen Chang only retreated 2 steps before he stabilized his body. Then he dived again, rushing to the front of Ling Yunfei, and the illusionary palm hit him head-on. The palm wind was extremely fierce. "This is impossible." Ling Yunfei frowned and used the origin returning steps to the limit, narrowly avoiding the palm. At the same time, a glint flashed through Qin Feiyong's eyes. Both of them were 9-star martial masters, and both of them had perfect martial skills, so their strength should be equal. But why did Shin Chang only take 2 steps back? Moreover, Ling Yunfei's mouth overflowed with a trace of blood. Shin Chang's face was only pale. He did not believe that Shen Chang had already broken through to 1-star martial ancestor, because the strength of a martial ancestor was at least 10 times stronger than a 9-star martial master. If he was really a 1-star martial ancestor, Ling Yunfei would have already fallen to the ground with serious injuries. "What are you running for? If you have the guts, fight me head-on." Shin Chang continued to provoke Ling Yunfei while chasing after him. "Humph!" Ling Yunfei snorted coldly, stomped his foot on the ground, and did not continue to dodge. True qi gushed out, and a punch was thrown out. "Overlord fist!" Shin Chang shouted in a low voice, and his fist was covered with true qi. The 2 fists met with a loud bang. Thump! The previous situation appeared once again. Ling Yunfei kept retreating, blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. But Shen Chang only took 2 steps back, and then pounced towards Ling Yunfei. Ling Yunfei used the origin returning steps and continued to dodge. Luo Qingzhu said, "Something's wrong." Zhao Xuan said, "With Ling Yunfei's strength and actual combat experience, Shin Chang can't be his opponent. There must be a problem." Qin Feiyang raised his head and glanced at Xie Fang and the others. On their faces, there was a trace of a smug sneer. What's wrong? He looked at Shen Chong again, and his brows were tightly knitted into a line. The martial Imperial Hallmaster and the others were also a little suspicious. Didn't they say that Ling Yunfei defeated Xie Fang and Wang Xia by himself? But why did it seem that it didn't live up to the name now? In order to deal with you, I have put in a lot of effort. I even took the risk of being blamed by my father to teach them the Overlord Fist. If they can't win like this, then they are really trash. The eldest prince crossed his arms in front of his chest with a bright smile on his face. But then, his heart sank again, because he suddenly realized that Ling Yunfei's speed was at least twice as fast as Xin Chong's. In other words, the auxiliary martial skill that Ling Yunfei mastered was a perfect martial skill. If he continued to hide like this, it would probably become a big problem. Damn it, even a low-level auxiliary martial skill was very rare, let alone a perfect-level auxiliary martial skill. Where did this person get it? Shen Chong's auxiliary martial skill was actually given by him, and in order to get this martial skill, he used all his connections, spent 3 days, and paid a huge price. In the end, it didn't work at all. How annoying. It was also at this moment. Qin Feiyang's eyes lit up and shouted to Ling Yunfei, "Take off his clothes!" And the eldest prince looked at Qin Feiyang in surprise. Did he see through it so quickly? Clothes? Ling Yunfei was stunned. Although he didn't know what was going on, he didn't doubt Qin Feiyang's words at all. The next moment, he took the initiative to attack. After a few exchanges, he grabbed Shen Chong's clothes and pulled hard. With a poochie sound, Shen Chong's clothes were torn off on the spot. Inside, there was also a thin undergarment. But Qin Feiyang could tell at a glance that it was not undergarment, but soft armor. Soft armor, soft as silk. Not only could it play a defensive role, it could also help Shen Chong remove a portion of the external force. This was the reason why Ling Yunfei had suffered so many losses. Qin Feiyang looked at the eldest prince and frowned. What explanation do you have? I don't know either. The eldest prince shook his head and said innocently, although I said just now that weapons are not allowed, soft armor is a defensive armor and can't be considered a weapon. So Shen Chong didn't break the rules. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. He retracted his gaze and looked at the two people in the field. Meeting such a shameless person, he was helpless and didn't want to waste his breath. He said indifferently, Ling Yunfei, Shen Chong has a soft armor to protect his body. It's not unbreakable. Observe carefully. How to break it? Ling Yunfei muttered secretly, dodging while observing Shen Chong. Very quickly, he understood. Chapter 190. Haha, let's see how you break through my defense. Shen Chong laughed. His laughter was filled with mockery that could not be dispersed. It's too easy to break through your defense. Ling Yunfei took a few steps forward and circled behind Shen Chong like lightning. His palm was like a blade as he slapped the back of Shen Chong's head. With a bang, Shen Chong fell to the ground and fainted. You should be glad. If it wasn't for that stupid rule, your head would have exploded. Ling Yunfei laughed disdainfully. He turned to look at the first prince and said indifferently, Why aren't you announcing the result? Defeated? The first prince was stunned. Xie Fang and the others were also dumbfounded. The crowd outside the arena was even more dumbfounded. Wasn't this victory too easy? Even the big shots in the square were a little stunned. Jiang Jingyi sighed. This Jiang Haoyan is indeed not simple. His calm attitude when facing trouble is simply terrifying. Manager Li laughed. Although it was because of Jiang Haoyan's reminder, if Ling Yunfei wasn't smart enough, he wouldn't have been able to react. This kid is indeed a talent. Jiang Jingyi looked at the martial Imperial Hall Master and said helplessly, Yan Nanshan, Why are you so lucky? A few years ago, Feng Ling heir came and the limelight hasn't passed yet. Now there's another Ling Yunfei. It's impossible not to be jealous. Even if you're jealous, you can only stare. Yan Nanshan's face was full of smiles. He was very pleased with himself. In fact, he was also surprised. As the martial imperial hall master, he couldn't pay attention to every disciple. He knew that Ling Yunfei was Ling Feng's son, but he didn't know the details. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes today, he wouldn't have known that another monster had come to the martial imperial hall. A 16-year-old 9-star martial master with such astonishing battle awareness and actual combat experience could only be described as monstrous. On the other hand, he didn't look at Xin Chang anymore, as if he didn't treat him as a disciple of the martial imperial hall. If someone was happy, there would naturally be someone who was worried. The Lin family, the royal family, and the Danwang Hall were all very unhappy. The first prince even gave the overlord fist to Xin Chang. Even a fool could see that he was deliberately targeting Qin Feiyang and his group. If he succeeded, everyone would be happy. However, Xin Chang was defeated. This was not Xin Chang's face, but the first prince's. More importantly, today was the wedding ceremony of the eldest prince and Lin Yi. Such a thing was simply discrediting the royal family and the Lin family. As for the Danwang Hall, there was no reason for them to hate Ling Yunfei. If he had to find a reason, he could only blame Ling Yunfei for being Qin Feiyang's friend. In short, they had already lost their minds. They hated anyone related to Qin Feiyang. Seeing that the eldest prince was in a daze for a long time, the king of Yen felt embarrassed and shouted, "Why are you dawdling? Hurry up and announce the results." The first prince quivered and came back to his senses. A bright smile quickly crept onto his face. Congratulations to Ling Yunfei for advancing to the next round of the competition. Even if he was reluctant, he could only force a smile now. Let's see how long you can pretend. Ling Yunfei sneered secretly, turned around, and walked toward Qin Feiyang with Guiyuan steps. The first prince looked at his back, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. After asking Commander Su to carry Xin Chang down, he smiled and said, "Next, number 2 and number 8 will compete." On Qin Feiyang's side, Zhao Shuang'er walked out. On the opposite side was Xie Fang. It turns out to be just her. Xie Fang glanced at Zhao Shuang'er with disdain in his heart. The two stood opposite each other, separated by 10 meters. Xie Fang bowed like a gentleman and smiled. "Miss Shuang'er, I never bully women. You should take the initiative to admit defeat." "Really?" Zhao Shuang'er asked timidly. Xie Fang nodded, seeming to want to say something. Swish! But at this moment, Zhao Shuang'er took a step forward like a breeze, and in the blink of an eye, she appeared behind Xie Fang. It was Gale's steps. Following closely, she stretched out her hand and slapped the back of Xie Fang's head like Ling Yunfei did to Xin Chang. Bang! At this moment, Xie Fang fell to the ground like a dog eating shit, with a black and blue nose and swollen eyes. Immediately, Zhao Shuang'er stepped on Xie Fang's back, revealing an innocent smile, and asked, "Now tell me, who bullied who?" Xie Fang was completely confused. Until now, he still didn't know what had happened. The first prince and Wang Xia were also dumbstruck. The sea of people outside the arena fell into a dead silence. Defeated Xie Fang in one move? This little girl was too fierce, wasn't she? Only Qin Feiyang and the other two were not surprised at all, because they knew that Zhao Shuang'er's strength was not only a 9-star martial master, but also mastered the perfect auxiliary martial skill Gale steps. Even if Xie Fang went all out, he might not be her opponent. But he was recklessly showing off there, and even boasted that he didn't bully women? Wasn't this looking for abuse? There was another person who was more surprised than anyone present. He was Lin Chang. It could be said that he watched Zhao Shuang'er grow up, and he knew Zhao Shuang'er well. In his impression, Zhao Shuang'er was not very outstanding, but it had only been a year since he last saw her. How could she be so ridiculously strong? At the same time, there was also a hint of surprise in Lin Yi's empty eyes. I was actually trampled under the foot of a woman? Xie Fang finally reacted. There was no suspense. Suddenly, he became angry out of humiliation. His true energy surged out like a tide. Don't underestimate women in the future. Zhao Shuang'er pursed her lips and smiled. Then, she raised her jade foot and kicked Xie Fang's temple directly. Xie Fang screamed and flew out on the spot. Finally, he rolled in front of the first prince and fainted. The first prince looked at Zhao Shuang'er, then looked down at Xie Fang at his feet. The anger in his heart was uncontrollable. He really wanted to kick him. He resisted this thought, looked up at Commander Su and smiled. Take him over to recuperate. What was the most aggrieved thing for a person? It was the first prince's current state. His heart was about to explode from anger, but he still had to show a smile. Yes. Commander Su quickly ran over and ran to Ma Cheng and the others with Xie Fang in his arms. After taking out a healing pill for Xie Fang to consume, he threw him directly to Ma Cheng and the others, turned around and ran away. Useless trash. Take him away from me, so as not to make a fool of himself. Jia He yelled angrily. His dark face was so gloomy that it almost dripped water. Shui Yang, who was next to him, trembled. He quickly picked up Xie Fang and ran to the back. Great! However, on the other side, Yan Nanshan slapped the table and applauded regardless of the occasion. Although Zhao Shuang'er was a disciple of Star Moon City's Martial Lord Hall, she was also under his command. Looking at his disciples showing off their prowess one after another, as the hall master, he felt that his face was especially bright. Elder Wan and the beautiful woman were also beaming with joy, like a spring breeze. Look at how proud you guys are. Jiang Jingyi, who was at the side, rolled his eyes. Haha, I'm proud, so what? Yan Nanshan laughed and looked at him provocatively. It was as if he was saying, if you have the ability, why don't you also find 2 such monsters? Jiang Jingyi didn't think much of it. However, Ma Cheng and the others unconsciously clenched their fists. Their eyes were extremely cold, because that laughter was too ear-piercing. It was like an invisible slap that fiercely slapped their faces. The 3 of them looked at Wang Xia. Wang Xia noticed the 3 people's gazes and nodded heavily. The first prince said, Next, number 3 and number 7 will go on stage. Luo Qingzhu and Wang Xia walked towards each other at the same time. Why is it her? Wang Xia frowned and whispered, No matter who it is, I must win this battle. Luo Qingzhu's expression didn't show any contempt, nor was it serious. She seemed very calm. Wang Xia smiled and said, Sister Qingzhu, sorry to offend you. Luo Qingzhu just smiled lightly. Wang Xia's face turned serious. True energy gushed out from her palm. She suddenly swooped down and rushed in front of Luo Qingzhu. Her palm whistled out. The wind from her palm blew up Luo Qingzhu's dress and hair. She also waved her palm. However, this was just an ordinary palm. There wasn't even a trace of true energy. Seeing this, Wang Xia said angrily, Luo Qingzhu, don't look down on people. Before her voice faded, the 2 palms collided. Puff! Wang Xia suddenly spat out blood. She couldn't control her feet and retreated more than 10 meters. I'm not looking down on you. I'm just afraid of hurting you. Thank you. Luo Qingzhu lowered her slender arm and smiled faintly at Wang Xia. She then turned and walked to Zhao Shuang'er's side. She looked up at the first prince and waited for him to announce the result. However, the first prince didn't seem to see it. He lowered his head and his face was green and red. There were only 5 matches in total. The other party had already won 3 matches in a row. He was now beginning to regret holding this competition. Jiang Jingyi was very proud. He looked at Yan Nanshan and said with a smile, "How is my daughter?" "She's much stronger than your two monstrous disciples." Yan Nanshan said disdainfully, "If they had a father like you, it's hard to say who's stronger and who's weaker. Moreover, your daughter is also a disciple of the martial imperial hall. What are you so proud of?" Jiang Jingyi's face stiffened, and he said angrily, "I shouldn't have let her enter the martial imperial hall." Yan Nanshan said disdainfully, "Is it up to you to decide whether she enters the martial imperial hall or not? Moreover, it's too late to regret now." Hearing this, Jiang Jingyi seemed to have something stuck in his throat, and his face turned red. As for Ma Qing and the other two, they were too ashamed to continue staying. However, because of King Yen and the Lin family's ancestor, they couldn't leave first. All their anger could only be suppressed in their hearts. King Yen glanced at the first prince and frowned slightly. He ordered, "Commander Su, you go and preside." He couldn't lose face anymore. Otherwise, today's wedding would definitely become a joke. "Yes." Commander Su bowed and replied. He ran to the first prince and said in a low voice, "Your Highness, leave this to me. Go and rest for a while." The first prince nodded and walked to King Yan's side in a daze. He lowered his head and didn't say a word. For this final match, in order to humiliate Qin Feiyang, he had searched for auxiliary martial techniques, forged a defensive soft armor, and even taught him the Overlord Fist. It could be said that he was worried sick. However, he had put in so much effort, but in the end he didn't get anything. He really couldn't accept this cruel fact. This competition shouldn't have been held in the first place. This was asking for humiliation. Seeing that his son had been dealt such a blow and had completely lost his previous confidence, the anger in King Yan's heart grew stronger. He glanced at Qin Feiyang from the corner of his eyes, and a trace of shocking hostility flashed past the depths of his eyes. Chapter 191. Commander Su said loudly, "Let's start the fourth round. Number 4 against number 6. The teenager in purple from the Lin family walked out. At the same time, a teenager from the royal family walked out. As there were only 4 people on Qin Feiyang's side, one of the 6 people on the first prince's side would definitely be on his side. Ling Yunfei crossed his arms and smiled evilly. Dog against dog. It should be exciting. Qin Feiyang shook his head and said, "That's impossible. Before the 2 of them meet, one of them will definitely admit defeat." As he expected, the teenager from the royal family forfeited in less than 10 breaths. Qin Feiyang whispered, "Qingzhu, what's his name?" Actually, he thought the teenager from the Lin family would admit defeat. He didn't expect it to be someone from the royal family. Luo Qingzhu said his name is Lin Hua. He is a disciple of a branch of the Lin family. Due to his extraordinary talent, he was brought to Yen City by Lin Han from a young age and was carefully nurtured. Lin Hua has already recognized Lin Han as his godfather. "I see." Qin Feiyang suddenly understood. Commander Su said, "The 5th round starts now." "It's finally my turn." Qin Feiyang's eyes shone. He took a step forward. His long hair danced in the wind and his clothes rustled. The teenager from the royal family on the opposite side also strode forward. However, he was originally full of confidence, but after seeing what happened to Xie Fang and the others, he was now extremely nervous, especially at this moment when he saw Qin Feiyang, who was full of confidence. He couldn't help but want to retreat. The king of Yen looked at the teenager and frowned tightly. He shouted, "The royal family forfeits this round." "What? Forfeit?" The people outside the arena were extremely shocked. Was Zhang Haoyan so terrifying? He forfeited before the match even started? However, the tycoons and patriarchs present thought that the king of Yen made a wise decision, because they could all see that the teenager from the royal family had lost his confidence. Even he had lost confidence in himself. How could he defeat Zhang Haoyan, who was confident? If this continued, The royal family would only be more embarrassed. The King of Yen said again, "Half an hour after the break, the finals will begin." Rest? Qin Feiyang frowned, feeling somewhat puzzled. Zhao Shuanger and Luo Qingzhu both won in one move and were not injured at all. Ling Yunfei was only slightly injured. Lin Hua was not injured at all. Was there a need for an intermission? However, this was the King of Yan's order, and it was not his place to question him. He turned around and met up with Ling Yunfei and the others. Then, they walked towards Yan Nanshan and Jiang Jingyi. In the meantime, Lin Hua also ran towards Lin Han. Ling Yunfei frowned. Are they planning to play some tricks? His voice was so low that only Qin Feiyang and the other two could hear him. Qin Feiyang said, "I don't know, but I can be sure that King Yan will not let us continue to be arrogant." "Ha, not bad, not bad. All of you performed very well today. But no matter what, you are still guests. When the finals begin, remember to be humble and give them some face." Yan Nanshan laughed heartily. Qin Feiyang and the other three stood in front of him with a bitter smile on their faces. They wanted to say that it seemed that the person who did not give face to the royal family and the Lin family here was the hall master. Wasn't it obvious that he was making fun of them by saying it without hiding anything? Sure enough, the King of Yen and the others on the main seat looked very ugly. The King of Yen said in a low voice, "Lin Han, give Lin Hua a supreme grade red fire glass tree. I want to shut them all up." Lin Hua's heart trembled. He was overjoyed. In the meantime, the first prince was also in high spirits. His previous depression was swept away and his eyes became extremely sharp. That's right. As long as Lin Hua took a supreme grade red fire glass elixir now, he could step into a 2-star martial grandmaster from a 9-star martial master. At that time, Jiang Haoyan, Ling Yunfei, Luo Qingzhu, they would all be trampled under his feet. However, Lin Han frowned and said in a low voice, "I don't have a supreme grade red fire glass elixir." "Why don't you have an important elixir with you at all times?" The King of Yen stared at him angrily. Lin Han smiled bitterly. Once the supreme grade red fire glass elixir appeared, it caused a mad scramble. Now even the treasure pavilion had no stock. Even if he had gold coins, there was no place to buy it. The first prince pondered for a while and said in a low voice, "Father, I have 5 elixirs here. Why don't you give one to Lin Hua first?" "Okay." The King of Yen nodded. Although it was a betrothal gift for the Lin family, he could not care so much now. Getting back his face was the most important thing. The first prince looked around. Seeing that no one was paying attention, he took out a jade box and handed it to Lin Hua without a trace. He said, "Take it in the palace. Relax and don't arouse suspicion." "Understood." Lin Hua nodded and hid the jade box in his sleeve. He turned around and strode toward the palace gate. Seeing this, Qin Feiyang and the other 3 looked at each other with a trace of doubt in their eyes. "I'll go and check." Ling Yunfei took a few steps forward and blocked in front of Lin Hua. He chuckled and said, "Brother Lin, where are you going?" "Get out of my way." Lin Hua's eyes darkened and he shouted coldly. Ling Yunfei looked him up and down. When he noticed that Lin Hua had his right hand in his sleeve, he asked curiously, "Brother Lin, are you holding something in your hand?" Lin Hua's heart skipped a beat. The King of Yen and the others could not help but frown. These yellow-haired brats were really each harder to deal with than the other. If the jade box in Lin Hua's hand was exposed, they would become a laughing stock. The first prince's eyes flashed. He stood up and walked to Lin Hua. He looked at Ling Yunfei and said with a smile, "Brother Lin, you think too much. I just asked Lin Hua to help me get something from the palace." Ling Yunfei smiled and said, "I'm just joking. Please don't mind." "Humph." Lin Hua snorted and strode away without looking back. The first prince cupped his hands and said, Brother Lin, after the competition, you must stay and attend the royal banquet. Ling Yunfei said, Sure, as long as you invite me. I will definitely invite you. The first prince smiled and nodded to Qin Feiyang and the others. He then returned to his seat. Something's wrong. Ling Yunfei came to Qin Feiyang and whispered, It's really strange. There's so many maids here. They can go and get something. Also, the first prince is recovering quickly. Luo Qingzhu and Zhao Shuang are agreed in whispers. Qin Feiyang also frowned, hearing their discussion. The beautiful woman turned to look at them and said with a strange expression, Why do I feel that you are here to cause trouble? Is that so? Qin Feiyang showed an innocent face, hearing the beautiful woman's words. Jiang Jingyi, Yannan Shan, Elder Wan, and Manager Li gave them strange looks. Jiang Jingyi said, Qingzhu, Shuang'er, you're both girls. Don't learn bad things from them. Qin Feiyang and Wang Chong looked at each other with bitterness in their hearts. Lin Hua was holding a bouquet of bright flowers as he walked out of the palace gates. He was in high spirits and full of confidence. However, when Qin Feiyang and the others looked at him, he immediately restrained himself. However, the expression in his eyes had changed. There was a trace of contempt in his eyes. He walked up to the first prince and handed him the flowers. Why are you giving me flowers? The first prince frowned. Lin Hua said, Didn't you say in front of everyone that I would help you go in to get something? We have to take something out. Smart. The eldest prince's eyes were full of appreciation. He got up and took the bouquet. He walked to Lin Yi and smiled. This is for you. Palace Lord Prince is so romantic. Yes, those flowers were just picked. He is really considerate. Lin Yi is so lucky to be able to marry such a good man. The girls around the family masters couldn't help but be envious. Romantic? What a country, bumpkin. Fatso outside the arena looked disdainful. However, Lin Yi sat there motionless. She had no intention of taking it. The first prince was about to change his expression. The noblewoman smiled and said, What are you thinking about? Why are you so absorbed? His Highness's kindness. Why don't you accept it quickly? Lin Yi said, Adoptive mother, I'm a little uncomfortable. Can you accept it for me first? Okay, I know you are shy. The noblewoman smiled again and again. She took the bouquet from the first prince and smiled. Your Highness, I apologize to you on behalf of Yi. Auntie, what are you saying? We will be a family later. You don't have to be so polite. The first prince smiled, looked at Lin Yi with concern and asked, Were you feeling uncomfortable? Do you want to take a rest first? Lin Yi said, Thank you, Your Highness, but it doesn't matter. I will be fine after sitting for a while. Then, if you can't hold on, just let me know. The first prince appeared to be very caring, but Lin Yi didn't seem to appreciate it. King Yen, Lin Han, and the Lin family's ancestor next to him frowned slightly. Obviously, they were very dissatisfied with Lin Yi's current performance. I'm afraid that Lin Yi will inevitably be reprimanded by them after the wedding. King Yen nodded to Commander Su in the middle of the square. Commander Su understood and said loudly, Well, the finals are about to begin. The 5 contestants, please come forward and draw lots. The competition officially begins now. Lin Hua took a step forward, turned his head, and glanced at Qin Feiyang and the other 3. There was a hint of mockery at the corner of his mouth, and then quickly walked to Commander Su. Be careful. Qin Feiyang reminded the 3 of them and walked over with them. Commander Su glanced at them and said, Since there are 5 of you, one of you can draw a blank lot, and the person who draws a blank lot will directly enter the next round. Lin Hua took the lead to draw a bamboo lot, looked down, and said coldly, I am the first lot. Zhao Shuang'er drew the second lot. Ling Yunfei drew the third lot. Qin Feiyang drew the fourth lot. The blank lot naturally fell into Luo Qingzhu's hand. She smiled at them and said, "It seems that my luck is better. No matter how good your luck is, you will be trampled under my feet in the end. Moreover, even if it is a woman, I will not show mercy." Chapter 192. This time they drew lots. Commander Su did not tamper with it, because it was no longer necessary. Lin Hua and Zhao Shuanger will start the first match. Everyone else leave. Commander Su shouted. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and asked, "Commander Su, I'm number 4. His opponent should be me, right?" Ling Yunfei and the other two also frowned. According to the previous rules, it should be number 1 against number 4, number 2 against number 3. That was Qin Feiyang against Lin Hua, Ling Yunfei against Zhao Shuanger. But now Commander Su disrupted the rules and let Zhao Shuanger and Lin Hua fight, while Qin Feiyang and Ling Yunfei fight. What was the meaning of this? Commander Su smiled and said, "That was just now. Now is now. If you have any objections, we can negotiate." Qin Feiyang's face darkened. Zhao Shuanger smiled and said, "No need. The guest will follow the host." "No way." Qin Feiyang shook his head. Lin Hua must have some tricks up his sleeve. He could not let Zhao Shuanger take the risk. Zhao Shuanger said, "If I can't beat him, I'll admit defeat. It's no big deal." Qin Feiyang and Ling Yunfei looked at each other and could only step aside helplessly. Zhao Shuanger took a step forward and looked at Lin Hua. "Please enlighten me. Bring it on." Lin Hua looked at her with contempt. Zhao Shuanger frowned. She used the wind steps, and the crescent moon palm went straight to Lin Hua's face. "No matter how fast you are, you're still trash in front of me." Lin Hua was arrogant. He raised his big hand and gently slapped out. No vital energy. No martial arts technique. It was blatant disdain. Qin Feiyang looked at this scene and had an uneasy premonition. Bang! The two palms collided. Zhao Shuanger was sent flying. Blood spurted out. Her face was also pale in an instant. With a bang, she fell to the ground, and even the ground cracked. How could this be? This turn of events stunned Ling Yunfei, Luo Qingzhu, and Fatso. They were very clear about Zhao Shuanger's strength. She, who possessed a perfect auxiliary martial technique, was completely invincible in the same realm. But now he was actually heavily injured by Lin Hua. Yan Nanshan, the beautiful woman, and elder one rose from their seats, their faces filled with disbelief. Jiang Jingyi and manager Li also frowned. However, the royal family, the Lin family, and the people of the Danwang Hall were all smiles. Especially the first prince. Even though the other party was a woman, he still felt relieved. The anger in his heart finally found an outlet to vent. Lin Hua proudly walked in front of Zhao Shuanger, grabbed her hair, and sneered, "Aren't you a monster from the martial imperial palace? Why is he so weak?" Boom! After saying this, he actually punched Zhao Shuanger's lower abdomen. Puff! Zhao Shuanger violently spurted out blood. Her beautiful face was distorted on the spot. Trash should have the awareness of trash. His face was full of arrogance, and he actually slapped Zhao Shuanger's face again. Qin Feiyang's face was gloomy to the extreme. Luo Qingzhu's face was also as cold as ice. She shouted, "Commander Su, Shuanger is already heavily injured, but Lin Hua still won't stop. Tell me, is he deliberately killing people?" Commander Su shook his head and said, "Zhao Shuanger hasn't admitted defeat, so the competition isn't over." What kind of bullshit competition is this scram? Qin Feiyang was seething with anger. He completely ignored the big shots present and walked towards Lin Hua, step by step. Commander Su's face changed, and he shouted, "If you dare break the rules, this commander will disqualify you." "Do you think I really want to participate in the competition? With my Zhang Haotian's ability, what can I get? Qin Feiyang laughed angrily. His aura exploded, and strands of golden light appeared in his palm. This sentence, although it was extremely arrogant, but no one present refuted it, because this was the truth. The value of a top-grade alchemist was even higher than a war emperor. Commander Su's pupils also shrank, but Qin Feiyang's arrogant attitude made him even angrier. Shua. He took a step forward and stood in front of Qin Feiyang. His aura was like a torrent, covering the sky and covering the earth as it rushed towards Qin Feiyang. Humph! Luo Qingzhu and Ling Yunfei coldly snorted at the same time. They came to Qin Feiyang's left and right sides, and their eyes were frighteningly gloomy. Facing the three of them, Commander Su actually felt an inexplicable panic. This was very difficult for him to accept. One had to know that he was a war king. The strongest of the three people in front of him was only a martial ancestor. How could they give him such a sense of oppression? But at this moment, Yan Nanshan said in a deep voice, "The martial imperial hall admits defeat." Lin Han shouted, "Lin Hua, the martial imperial hall has already admitted defeat. Why aren't you stopping? Consider yourself lucky." Lin Hua lowered his head and looked at Zhao Shuanger with disdain. He stood up and kicked Zhao Shuanger's lower abdomen again. Bang! Zhao Shuanger was kicked away and landed beside Qin Feiyang and the other two. She fainted on the spot and lost consciousness. Luo Qingzhu hurriedly squatted beside her, her face full of worry. Qin Feiyang took out a supreme grade healing pill and let Ling Yunfei feed it to her. Lin Hua patted his clothes and looked at Qin Feiyang and the other two. He said lightly, "Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. I didn't kill her." Qin Feiyang turned his head and looked at him. His sharp eyes were like the edge of a knife, extremely frightening. Ling Yunfei stood up and looked at Lin Hua gloomily. He said in a low voice, he must have taken the supreme grade red fire-colored glass pill when he entered the palace just now. Qin Feiyang said, "It's meaningless to talk about this now." Ling Yunfei turned to look at him and said with a smile, "I know what to do." Then he looked at Commander Su and said, "I forfeit." "I forfeit too." Luo Qingzhu followed. Everyone was shocked. They were just a little surprised that Ling Yunfei forfeited. However, Luo Qingzhu's strength had obviously surpassed that of a martial master. She actually took the initiative to forfeit? How much confidence did she have in Qin Feiyang? More importantly, Qin Feiyang was only a 9-star martial master now. Yan Nanshan and Jiang Jingyi could not help but frown when the two of them forfeited. It was not that they did not believe in Qin Feiyang. It was Lin Hua's current strength that was already far away from Qin Feiyang. The eldest prince and the others were very happy. Although they all knew that Ling Yunfei and Luo Qingzhu forfeited to help Qin Feiyang, they were very happy to see such a situation. They finally vented their anger. "Jiang Haotian, you will pay the price for your previous arrogance." A cold light flashed in the eldest prince's eyes. He clenched his fist and coughed dryly. Lin Hua immediately looked at him. From the eldest prince's eyes, he could read that he was humiliating Jiang Haotian. He secretly sneered and retracted his gaze. He looked at Qin Feiyang and teased, "They have paid so much. If you lose later, you will lose face." Qin Feiyang directly ignored him. He looked at Commander Su and said, "Can we begin?" This. Commander Su was also at a loss for what to do by this sudden change. He looked at King Yen for help. King Yen said, "Since they have forfeited, let's start the final battle." Commander Su nodded, glanced at Luo Qingzhu and the other two, and shouted, "Unrelated people leave!" Ling Yunfei carried the unconscious Zhao Shuanger and walked to Yan Nanshan and the others with Luo Qingzhu. "How is she?" the beautiful woman asked. Ling Yunfei said, "She is just unconscious. Her life is not in danger." "That's good." The beautiful woman nodded and looked back at Qin Feiyang. Everyone present could tell that Qin Feiyang's heart was burning with rage and was about to explode. Competition. Commander Su looked at the two of them and shouted, "Begin!" Lin Hua placed one hand behind his back and hooked his finger, saying disdainfully, "Jiang Haoyan, don't say that I'm bullying you. I will only use one hand." Qin Feiyang did not waste time and walked over step by step with a threatening cold light in his eyes. Lin Han raised his brow and shouted, "Lin Hua, be serious!" Lin Hua was helpless and said, "I have no choice. I don't dare to disobey my foster father's orders. Right now, I will show you what a true monster is." After he said that, he shot out like an arrow, his eyes flashing with killing intent. That was right. He was prepared to kill Qin Feiyang. Although it was against the rules, as long as he could kill this person, it did not matter if he was disqualified. Anyway, as long as he won, the royal family would definitely reward him in private. At this moment, Yan Nanshan and the others felt their hearts tighten. They almost could not help but admit defeat. Ling Yunfei said, "I believe in him, so Palace Master, please respect his choice." Jiang Haoyan trembled in fear. Suddenly, Lin Hua roared and revealed a cruel smile. The true qi in his palm surged, and the furiously struck towards Qin Feiyang. However, under everyone's surprised gaze, Qin Feiyang did not dodge. He stopped in his tracks and looked at the aggressive Lin Hua. Has he given up? That's right. How can a mere 9-star martial master be a match for a 2-star martial ancestor? Rather than make a futile struggle, it's better to just give up. The eldest prince sneered in his heart. But just as Lin Hua's palm was about to hit Qin Feiyang's chest, Qin Feiyang suddenly raised his arm. He lightly waved his palm. In the center of his palm, rays of dazzling golden light bloomed. The word "return" instantly appeared. Bang! The next moment, the two palms met. The scene that caused an uproar suddenly appeared. Poof! Lin Hua spat out a mouthful of blood. At the same time, accompanied by a cracking sound, his arm was broken on the spot and his skin and flesh were exposed. His body, like a meteorite, flew into the distance. How is this possible? All the big shots and family heads suddenly stood up and looked at this scene in disbelief. A 9-star martial master actually sent a 2-star martial ancestor flying with one palm. Was this a dream? At the same time, Qin Feiyang also retreated, blood continuously flowing out of his mouth. It seems that although the word "return" is powerful, it has a limit. But a 2-star martial ancestor is not the limit. His eyes burst with light. He took the initiative to attack, using the smoke-gathering steps, turned into a shadow and chased after Lin Hua. At this moment, he was like an enraged lion, shaking everyone's hearts. Boom! At this moment, Lin Hua smashed into the square, directly smashing a deep hole in the ground. Why is this happening? My power, actually all of it, was reflected back. Did I see a ghost? Chapter 193. Sensing Qin Feiyang, he rushed over. Enduring the pain, Lin Hua quickly got up and jumped out of the pit. I don't believe that I will lose to him. He was in a state of madness, his eyes were blood red. His other hand clenched tightly. Jiang Haotian, I will kill you. Overlord Fist. With a roar, he rushed towards Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang's eyes were like lightning. He stretched out his hand and hit the fist without dodging. A golden light appeared. Lin Hua was sent flying again, screaming in pain. Crack! His arm was broken too. Bang! He flew tens of meters away, creating another pit in the square. Dust filled the air. Why is it like this? He roared in his heart, unable to accept this fact. Qin Feiyang also retreated a few feet. After stabilizing his body, he continued to rush towards Lin Hua. After 2 hard hits, his arm began to feel numb, as if his muscles were being torn apart. He knew his arm had reached its limit. If he received a third hit from Lin Hua, it would definitely break. However, this was impossible, because Lin Hua's arms were broken. Even if he was a 2-star martial grandmaster, he was just a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Whoosh! At this moment, Qin Feiyang was like a flash of lightning, rushing towards the pit. After 2 hits, Lin Hua was about to fall apart. He did not even have the strength to get up. Qin Feiyang jumped into the pit. He grabbed Lin Hua's hair. "How you treated Zhao Shuang'er, I will return it to you double," he said coldly. He punched Lin Hua's stomach with all his might. Ow! Lin Hua screamed like a pig being slaughtered. A clown like you can be considered a demon? Qin Feiyang punched again. Lin Hua was in so much pain that his whole body was convulsing, his face pale. His facial features were twisted to the extreme, extremely ferocious. What I hate the most in my life are men who bully women. They are simply scum. Qin Feiyang raised his hand and slapped Lin Hua's face. A dark red palm print appeared on his face. Bang, bang, bang. Next, he fanned himself wildly. Lin Hua's face, which could be considered handsome, quickly swelled up and did not look human anymore. "Jiang Haoyan, spare me. I'll kneel before you. I'll apologize to Zhao Shuang." Lin Hua begged for mercy. His heart was shrouded by deep despair and fear. "Forgive you? You are too naive." Qin Feiyang sneered and grabbed his ankle. He dragged him out of the pit and into everyone's sight. Is he still human? Seeing Lin Hua's miserable state, everyone present felt their scalps go numb. "I admit." Lin Hua wanted to admit defeat. However, Qin Feiyang stomped on his mouth, shattering all of his teeth and causing him to spurt out blood. Following closely, he grabbed Lin Hua's clothes, lifted Lin Hua up high, and threw him down. His knee slammed into Lin Hua's abdomen. Lin Hua screamed miserably. "Commander Su, why are you still standing there?" Lin Han roared. If this continued, Lin Hua would be killed alive. Commander Su suddenly regained his senses and hurriedly shouted, "Jiang Haoqian, stop! Didn't you say that if you don't admit defeat, the competition is not over?" Qin Feiyang turned to look at him. His mouth pursed with a trace of ridicule. Immediately, he stomped on Lin Hua's abdomen again. Lin Hua continued to vomit blood. He no longer had the strength to scream. Like a pile of mud, he lay on the ground. Commander Su clenched his fists. His face was full of anger. But there was nothing he could do, because he did say the sentence just now. Everyone heard it. If he forcibly stopped Qin Feiyang now, it would be too obvious that he was biased. And now, Qin Feiyang didn't know how to torture Lin Hua, because Lin Hua's whole body had been beaten up by him. That's right. There was another place. The corner of his mouth lifted. He kicked Lin Hua's egg. My Lin family admits defeat. Lin Han's face changed and hurriedly shouted. But it was too late. With a crack, the egg broke. Seeing the scene, all the men could not help but clamp their legs together. Their crotch was cold. He actually kicked the egg. This kid was ruthless, right? Yan Nanshan and the others' faces twitched. Little bastard. The beautiful woman spat. Good disdain, learning these dirty tricks. This time, Lin Han would probably go crazy with anger. Sure enough, Lin Han suddenly stood up. His eyes burst with a shocking cold light. He gritted his teeth and said, I have already shouted that I admit defeat. You still want to kill me. If I remember correctly, when the palace master shouted that he admitted defeat, Lin Hua still kicked Feng Ling air. I want to ask, why didn't you jump out and scold Lin Hua for his evil intentions? Qin Feiyang waved his hand and said indifferently. Lin Han said, Qin Feiyang waved his hand and said, don't find excuses. Who in Yen City doesn't know that the Lin family is a hypocrite? I'm too lazy to argue with you. Hurry up and take this trash back. But from now on, I'm afraid he can't be your adopted son. But congratulations, you have another adopted daughter. Remember to raise her well. Maybe in the future, she can marry into a good family. Remember to invite me to the wedding banquet." Qin Feiyang grinned, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. Uft! As soon as these words came out, many people burst out laughing. This kid was too immoral. These words were even more embarrassing than walking up to Lin Han and slapping him in public. This time, the Lin family had lost all their face. There was no doubt that Lin Han was furious and wanted to kill him. Cough! But then, the king of Yen coughed dryly to remind Lin Han to pay attention to the situation. He said to Commander Su, "Take Lin Hua away to recuperate." In fact, the king of Yen was more angry than anyone now. Sacrificing a supreme-grade red fire-colored glass elixir not only did not suppress this kid, but also made him more and more arrogant. He even used Lin Hua as a stepping stone to become famous. From today onwards, this kid's reputation in Yen City would rise to another level. Commander Su picked up Lin Hua, glanced at Qin Feiyang coldly, and turned to run toward the palace gate. This time, the royal family had suffered a double loss. The wedding ceremony, which was supposed to be a joyous occasion, was now very unpleasant. The king of Yen turned to look at the eldest prince and said in a low voice, "What are you waiting for? This competition is organized by you. Even if they ride on your head, you have to bear with it." "Yes." The eldest prince nodded, took a deep breath, got up with a smile, and walked toward the center of the square. "The competition has come to this point. Now I announce. First place, Jiang Haotian. Second place, Lin Hua. Third place, Luo Qingzhu. I don't know if anyone has any objections to this result." He looked around at the crowd. No one had any objections. "Well, I'll give out the rewards now." The eldest prince took out 2 jade boxes and handed them to Qin Feiyang, smiling. "Brother Jiang, congratulations." Qin Feiyang took the jade boxes. After confirming that they were snow crystals and 9 suns flowers, he kept them, cupped his hands, and smiled. "Thank you for your care, your highness." The eldest prince's eyelids twitched, and he smiled faintly. "You deserve it." Then he took out 2 more jade boxes, one for Luo Qingzhu and the other for Lin Han. This competition had finally come to an end. Qin Feiyang also returned to stand behind Yan Nanshan. The other big shots also gave him a thumbs up immediately. Qin Feiyang smiled and asked, "How is Shuang?" "Her injuries are recovering." Ling Yunfei hugged her the whole time. "That's good." Qin Feiyang heaved a sigh of relief. The beautiful woman asked curiously, "Haotian, how did you do it just now? Why do I feel that when you fought with Lin Hua, you didn't use any strength at all?" Qin Feiyang said faintly, "Lin Hua is just a paper tiger. There's nothing special about him." Lin Han and the red-haired old man suddenly turned to look at him. Their eyes flashed coldly. Qin Feiyang glanced at them slightly, then looked away directly, ignoring the existence of the two. At this time, King Yen got up and turned to face the big shots and family heads. "First of all, we want to thank those young people for giving us such a wonderful match. Although the process was a bit unpleasant, it is undeniable that they are all the future pillars of Yen County. This king also sincerely hopes that every young genius can reach the pinnacle of life. Now the competition is over. It's time to get to the point. I now announce that the marriage ceremony of my son and Lin Han's daughter, Lin Yi, has officially begun. Let's welcome the 2 newlyweds." King Yen smiled. Wait, but at this moment, a cold shout rang out. In an instant, the audience was silent. They all looked at the source of the sound. It was Qin Feiyang. King Yen frowned imperceptibly and asked with a smile, "Is there anything else, Brother Jiang?" The beautiful woman whispered, "Haotian, don't mess around anymore. Stay here." I won't mess around. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and walked to the front of Yan Nanshan and the others. Ling Yunfei, Luo Qingzhu, Fengling Air Fatso, and Lu Hong couldn't help but calm down at this moment because they knew that Qin Feiyang was ready to lay his cards on the table. Hurry up! In the castle, Wolf King also howled excitedly as if he was injected with chicken blood. As for the others, they all looked to Qin Feiyang in confusion. But Qin Feiyang turned a blind eye to these gazes. His eyes swept across Yan Nanshan, the beautiful woman, Elder One, and Steward Li one by one. Suddenly, he bowed to the few of them. What is this for? They frowned. Qin Feiyang said, in front of everyone, this junior would like to solemnly thank the seniors for taking care of this junior these past few months. The beautiful woman pursed her lips and said, I thought it was something serious. Elder One smiled and said, get up quickly. It's just a small matter. There's no need to make it so grand. Besides, you're not the main character today. Steward Li said helplessly, yes, I'm a little embarrassed after what you've done. If you really don't want me to write you an IOU, we can discuss it in private. IOU? Qin Feiyang shook his head and laughed. He didn't say anything more. He walked to the center of the square step by step. He looked up at Shi Zheng and cupped his hands. Elder Shi, the person I should thank the most is you. Thank you for taking care of me these few months. It's nothing. Shi Zheng smiled and felt a little confused. Not to mention Shi Zheng. Everyone present was a little confused. Chapter 194. Qin Feiyang took a deep breath and turned to look at Lin Yi. A smile appeared on his face. The eldest prince raised his eyebrows. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, Girl, sorry to keep you waiting for a long time. Lin Yi's body and mind trembled. She got up suddenly and stared at Qin Feiyang. Her face was full of disbelief. In this world, only one person would call her a girl. It was Qin Feiyang. Seeing Lin Yi's reaction, the eldest prince's face sank suddenly and shouted, Jiang Haoqian, what do you mean? Are you trying to snatch the bride? Others looked at each other, their eyes full of surprise. The name Jiang Haoqian has been with me for a full year. To be honest, even I sometimes think that I am Jiang Haoqian. But Qin Feiyang glanced at the crowd and his eyes became firm. He said word by word, I am not Jiang Haoqian. I am Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang. The people present suddenly got up, surprised and doubtful. Lin Yi's delicate body trembled constantly, and tears couldn't help but flow down. Qin Feiyang looked around and said firmly, You didn't hear it wrong. I am Qin Feiyang, wanted by the royal family. I am Qin Feiyang who killed Lin Bailey. As he finished speaking, he took out a medicinal pill. This pill, it was called Facial Restoration Pill. It could restore one's true appearance. He stuffed it into his mouth without hesitation. His figure and appearance began to change rapidly. Not long after, a face that was familiar to the world appeared. He was about 8 meters tall. His body was neither fat nor thin, and his facial features were handsome. The previous morbidity had disappeared without a trace and was replaced by fortitude. However, under the fortitude, there was a trace of vicissitudes that should not belong to this age. It's really him. Jiang Haoqian is Qin Feiyang. Being wanted by the royal family, he still dares to come to Yen City. He even announced his true identity in front of so many big shots? Is this a provocation to the royal family? The place suddenly burst into an uproar. The big shots in the square all locked their faces firmly. It was unbelievable to the extreme. Yan Nanshan and the others finally understood. Why did this man bow to them and say those words to them before? It was because he wanted to announce his identity. In other words, this man was ready to be the enemy of the whole world. Lin Han's expression was particularly interesting. He sent all the warlords of the Lin family to guard in the major cities to look for this man. But he never thought that this kid would actually be right under his nose. In order to curry favor with this man, he gave him 5 million gold coins. He was blatantly looking down on him, the Lin family, and the royal family. Ha! Ma Cheng suddenly threw his head back and laughed. It was full of sarcasm. The target of their mockery was undoubtedly the martial imperial hall. Fortunately, he left the Danwang Hall. Otherwise, the Danwang Hall would have to bear the crime of harboring a wanted criminal and become the laughingstock of the world. Elder, he and Jia He also laughed. They did not hide the gloating on their faces. However, Yan Nanshan and the other two turned a deaf ear to them and stared at Qin Feiyang. They finally understood. It was because of his identity that they made such an agreement with him. Now, they really did not know whether they should invite this man to join the martial imperial hall or not. Hall master, 2 elders, I'm sorry. Ling Yunfei handed Zhao Shuang'er to Luo Qingzhu and bowed to Yan Nanshan and the other 2. Without hesitation, he walked to Qin Feiyang's side and stood together with him. At the same time, Fatso and Lu Hong also bowed to Shi Zheng apologetically and brought Lin Chong to Qin Feiyang's side. Qin Feiyang said with a faint smile, "Actually, I wouldn't blame you if you didn't come." "TSK, is Fat Lord such a disloyal person?" Fatso rolled his eyes at him. Ling Yunfei and Lu Hong also had bright smiles on their faces. Qin Feiyang was very touched. Ever since he was expelled from the imperial capital, he did not trust anyone except for Uncle Yuan. But gradually, he had Wolf King by his side. There were also 3 people who were willing to accompany him through life and death. What else was he not satisfied with? With a wave of his hand, Wolf King appeared out of thin air. Howl! At that moment, it howled at Sky Wolf excitedly. Ha! Yen Cheng, Brother Wolf, is out to act wildly. An unruly and wild laughter sounded in the minds of the big shots. It was Wolf King who was provoking them. At this moment, one wolf for people, treating each other with utmost sincerity and lofty sentiments. Although they were weak, the camaraderie they displayed made countless people blush with shame. The eldest prince was very happy. He was worried that he wouldn't have a chance to take revenge on these people. Unexpectedly, Qin Feiyang actually didn't know what was good for him and actually exposed his identity. Now he had a reason to deal with this group of people openly. His eyes turned cold as he waved his hand and said, "Take them down for me." The black-armored guards at the edge of the surroundings immediately turned around and surrounded them fiercely. Lin Han took a step forward, his body full of murderous intent, and shouted, "All of you stop! I want to kill them with my own hands and avenge my son!" Whoosh! He turned into an afterimage and shot towards Qin Feiyang and the others. "Why are you in such a hurry to kill me? It seems that you are very afraid that I will reveal all the good things your son did in Iron Ox Town." Qin Feiyang sneered. Lin Han said disdainfully, "Who will believe your words?" "I believe you." At this moment, a calm voice sounded. Yan Nanshan took a step forward and landed in front of Qin Feiyang and the others, turning around to look at Lin Han. Lin Han braked and stopped, saying angrily, "Palace Master Yan, Qin Feiyang is a wanted criminal of the royal family. How dare you protect them?" "Palace Master Yan, don't go overboard." The king of Yen frowned. At the same time, the red-haired old man also walked to the side of the king of Yen, his aura spreading. "You want to fight? The martial imperial hall has never been afraid of anyone." The beautiful woman chuckled and took a step forward at the same time with Elder Wan, landing on both sides of Yan Nanshan. As for Ma Cheng and the other 2, how could they let go of this good opportunity? Yan Nanshan, if it was someone else, we definitely wouldn't care. However, Qin Feiyang killed the innocent and has committed grave sins. We can only offend him. The 3 of them walked out one after another and stood in the camp of the king of Yen. Yan Nanshan glanced at the people of the three factions and said, without turning back, Qin Feiyang, as the palace master of the Martial Imperial Hall, I officially invite you to join the Martial Imperial Hall. Are you willing? The faces of the King of Yen and the rest darkened. It seemed like the Martial Imperial Hall was determined to protect Qin Feiyang and the rest today. Qin Feiyang sighed, Senior, why do you have to do this? When he was prepared to lay his cards on the table, he had already given up hope that the Martial Imperial Hall would continue to protect them. But now, the three leaders of the Martial Imperial Hall were all standing in front of him. They even invited him to join the Martial Imperial Hall at this time. It would be a lie if he wasn't touched. But because of this, he didn't want to implicate the Martial Imperial Hall. The beautiful woman said, Brat, if you dare to go back on your words, I will kill you right now. Qin Feiyang really didn't know what to say. Elder Wan guessed Qin Feiyang's concerns and said proudly, Don't worry about implicating us. Although the Martial Imperial Hall doesn't cause trouble, we are never afraid of it. Qin Feiyang clenched his fists and nodded. Okay, I agree to join the Martial Imperial Hall. Yan Nanshan sneered. Did you hear that? Qin Feiyang is already a disciple of the Martial Imperial Hall. As the Martial Imperial Hall Master, I have the responsibility and obligation to find out the truth and prove his innocence. You're clearly protecting him. The red-clothed old man was furious. Boom! The aura of several combat emperors soared into the sky at this moment. The royal family, the Lin family, and the Danwang Hall were obviously going to capture him by force. The atmosphere at the scene was extremely heavy. I can help Qin Feiyang prove that everything that happened in the Iron Ox town was Lin Bai Li's fault. If it was me, I would also kill Lin Bai Li. At this moment, Luo Qingzhu carried Zhao Shuang'er and walked into the square step by step. The first prince frowned. Sister Qingzhu, this has nothing to do with you. Leave now. Luo Qingzhu glanced at him and said, I came to Yen City this time to help Qin Feiyang testify. Why? What benefits did he give you? The first prince said angrily, When I met Qin Feiyang, he was not an alchemist yet. What benefits could I get? I just can't stand some people who rely on the royal family's support to intimidate others. I can't stand the fact that the royal family did not distinguish between right and wrong and did not investigate the truth. They only listened to some people's words and issued an arrest warrant for Qin Feiyang. Luo Qingzhu said calmly. After coming to Qin Feiyang's side, she handed Zhao Shuang'er to Ling Yunfei. Then, she turned around and looked at the King of Yen and the others without fear. The King of Yen and the others were instantly filled with murderous intent. What? You still want to touch my daughter? Jiang Jingyi landed beside Luo Qingzhu and looked at the King of Yen and the others coldly. Steward Li also came. This time, the situation was a little tricky. Qin Feiyang had never expected that there would be so many people standing together with him in the end. He stood out from the crowd and looked at the King of Yen. I won't regret killing Lin Bailey because he deserved it. Back then, I was just a nameless kid in Iron Ox Town. Just because I had a good relationship with Lin Yi, Lin Bailey was afraid that I would hinder Lin Yi from joining the royal family. So, he framed me behind my back and even tried to kill me everywhere. At that time, I really didn't think that I would come to this point today. Because I always thought that even if the Lin family was unreasonable, the royal family should be reasonable. But what I never expected was that the royal family's arrest warrant came down in just a few days. I want to ask the King of Yen, before issuing the arrest warrant, did you ask me a question? As the county king of the county of Yen, you are in charge of thousands of people. Is this how you deal with things? The emperor gave you the royal power not to let you form cliques and cover up your shortcomings, but to let you use a fair heart to maintain peace and solve the suffering of the people, isn't it? Qin Feiyang said calmly. As soon as these words came out, the King of Yen was speechless. He really couldn't figure out how a young boy who grew up in a small town knew so much. He even mentioned the emperor of the great Qin Empire. Similarly, Yan Nanshan and the others were also very surprised. Chapter 195. Yan Nanshan said calmly, Qin Feiyang has already told the truth, and Luo Qingzhu is his witness. I would like to ask Lin Han, what else do you have to say? Lin Han said gloomily, who doesn't know that they are close? It's normal for Luo Qingzhu to help Qin Feiyang, isn't it? The king of Yen nodded and said, that's right. Qin Feiyang may be young, but he is cunning. Luo Qingzhu might have fallen into his trap and been bewitched by him. Qin Feiyang was so angry that he laughed. He did not expect these people to be so shameless. Luo Qingzhu raised her eyebrows and looked at the king of Yen. King of Yen, are you saying that I'm stupid? I'm not the only witness this time. Shuang also testified. She grew up in Iron Bull Town. She knows many people and many things. Moreover, everyone in Iron Bull Town knows the truth of this matter, including my mother. King of Yen, you can send someone to investigate. It will be clear who is right and who is wrong. She said calmly. The king of Yan's heart sank. He turned to look at Lin Han with a sharp gaze. Actually, he did not know what happened a year ago. Back then, Lin Han had asked him to help arrest someone. Seeing that it was just a nameless pawn, he agreed without hesitation. He did not take it to heart at that time. However, he did not expect the situation to develop to this point. If things were really as Qin Feiyang and Luo Qingzhu said, he would be known as a muddle-headed person who covered up for the Lin family. Lin Han did not expect that a mere country boy would make such a big deal out of this. He also did not expect that the person who was worse than an ant in his eyes would become a supreme-grade alchemist who was the center of attention. King of Yen, Qin Feiyang is kind-hearted. He would not kill Lin Bailey for no reason. Yes, ever since he came to Yen City, he has been giving out supreme-grade elixirs for free. He has benefited many people and saved many lives. He even took special care of those ordinary people. This is enough to prove that he has a pure heart. I don't believe that such a sensible child like him would kill the innocent. Your Excellency, Prince of Yen, please be impartial and prove Qin Feiyang's innocence. That's right. Although our words are cheap, we will never allow such a good child to be harmed by evil people. Some people in the crowd outside the square also began to speak out in support of Qin Feiyang, and gradually, this kind of support was unstoppable. In less than 10 breaths, almost everyone was in high spirits. They waved their arms and cheered for Qin Feiyang. How magnificent was this scene! Tens of thousands of shouts were intertwined. How shocking was that! The various leaders and patriarchs stared blankly at the scene before them. The shock in his heart could no longer be described with words. A young man who had just arrived in Yen City, a mere 9-star martial master, could actually obtain the love and respect of so many people? Although the people of Yen City would bow when they saw them, but it was purely out of respect and even fear. But now, as long as one had discerning eyes, they would be able to tell that these people were sincerely supporting Qin Feiyang. There were even people who threatened to use their lives to defend Qin Feiyang's innocence. This kind of situation was truly unprecedented. Is this the purpose of his elixir distribution? The first prince's eyes widened in anger. It turned out that not long after he arrived in Yen City, this person had been planning for today. How could his scheming be so terrifying? Phew! Qin Feiyang also let out a long sigh. He turned to the crowd and said with a smile, "Thank you for your support. As I said before, as long as I'm still in Swallow City, I will continue to distribute pills." "Thank you, young Master Qin. My lords, did you see that? Such a good young man. Do you have the heart to hurt him? The most hateful thing is the Danwang Hall. You are purely abusing your position to avenge private grudges. Anyway, I won't allow it. I will defend his innocence, even if I die. That's right. Give him justice." The crowd roared with righteous indignation. Qin Feiyang turned to look at the Prince of Yen and said calmly, "The eyes of the people are clear. Even if the royal family, the Danwang Hall, and the Lin family join forces, don't even think about deceiving them." Ma Cheng and the other two started to regret their actions. They wanted to use this opportunity to get rid of Qin Feiyang and his gang. They did not expect to go for wool and come home shorn. "I am sorry, everyone. We did not know the truth just now. Now, the Danwang Hall will withdraw from this conflict," Ma Cheng said loudly to the crowd. If they did not withdraw, the Danwang Hall would lose the support of the people. This was the power of ordinary people. With their strength, they could easily suppress 10 ordinary people. However, there were tens of thousands of ordinary people. Even the leaders of the county of Yen had to consider the bigger picture. After the Danwang Hall withdrew, Lin Han started to panic. He wanted to find a chance to get rid of Qin Feiyang. That way, he would be able to end everything. However, Yan Nanshan and the others were like towering mountains in front of him. He could not find the slightest opportunity. Since Luo Qingzhu said that everyone in Iron Bull Town knows the truth, then we will verify it with them in front of everyone. Old One, contact the Hall Master of Iron Bull Town Martial Arts Hall immediately. Yan Nanshan said. Yes. Elder Wan took out an image crystal and quickly activated it. After a while, a shadow appeared. It was the Hall Master of Iron Bull Town Martial Arts Hall. The Hall Master of Martial Arts Hall saw that there were so many important people present. He quickly bowed and said, "Greetings, my lords." Elder Wan said, "Now tell me, why did Qin Feiyang kill Lin Bailey a year ago?" Qin Feiyang? The Hall Master of Martial Arts Hall was stunned. After thinking carefully for a while, he bowed and said, "I remember that Qin Feiyang killed Lin Bailey out of anger because Lin Bailey framed him. Also, I clearly remember that during Lin Yi's 15th birthday banquet, Lin Chan and Lin Bailey set up a maid named Xiao Hong to poison Lin Yi. They even asked Xiao Hong to frame Qin Feiyang. At that time, even Luo, Qinshu and I, as well as the Hall Master of Dan Hall, were deceived by them. They almost killed Qin Feiyang. Regarding this matter, I have always felt very guilty in my heart." The Hall Master of Martial Arts Hall said honestly, "Yes." Elder One nodded and said, "I know. You can continue with your work." Then he turned off the image crystal. At the same time, Luo Qingzhu also took out an image crystal and poured her true qi into it. After a while, Luo Qianshue's shadow appeared. Luo Qianxue smiled and said, "Qingzhu, are you contacting me because of Qin Feiyang?" "Yes, mother." Luo Qingzhu nodded. "It seems that the Lin family is hopeless." Luo Qianxue looked disappointed. Then she told the truth. Qin Feiyang walked to Luo Qingzhu's side and bowed. "Thank you, Aunt Xue." "It's okay. Remember to come back and chat with me when you're free." Luo Qianxue smiled and said with a loving look. Qin Feiyang nodded. "Aunt Xue?" Jiang Jingyi was stunned. He hurriedly waved at Luo Qianxue and said, "Xue," however. Before he could say anything, Luo Qianxue turned off the image crystal. This made him feel awkward. Qin Feiyang looked at Jiang Jingyi strangely. He turned to look at Ma Cheng and the other two and smiled faintly. "Seniors, why don't you ask the Hall Master of Iron Bull Town Pill Hall?" "No need," Ma Cheng replied faintly. "The truth has been revealed. Lord King Yen, we beg you to cancel the arrest warrant for Qin Feiyang." The crowd outside the field shouted. Yan Nanshan lifted the corner of his mouth and smiled. It seemed that he didn't need to do anything. These ordinary people were enough to help Qin Feiyang turn the situation around. King Yen glared at Lin Han fiercely and said to the crowd with a smile, "Okay, I now officially announce that I will cancel the arrest warrant for Qin Feiyang. I will also take out 10 million gold coins to compensate Qin Feiyang." "King Yen is wise," Everyone was overjoyed and knelt down. At this moment, Fatso and the others finally breathed a sigh of relief. King Yen looked at Qin Feiyang and smiled faintly. If you have any other requests, just tell me. I will try my best to satisfy you. Qin Feiyang looked at Lin Yi and cupped his hands. I beg King Yen to cancel the wedding of Lin Yi and the eldest prince. Lin Yi's eyes trembled, and tears flowed out uncontrollably. What? The faces of the people in the square suddenly changed. He really planned to snatch the bride. This is impossible. Lin Yi is my adopted daughter. I have the final say on who she wants to marry. You are not qualified to interfere. Lin Han roared with a stern expression. Qin Feiyang said faintly, I am indeed not qualified, but there is one person who is qualified. Who? Lin Han frowned. Lin Chong, it's your turn to come out. Qin Feiyang said faintly. Lin Chong. Lin Han glared and searched in the crowd. Father! Lin Yi murmured and was also searching. Lin Chong took a deep breath and stepped to Qin Feiyang's side. At that moment, everyone's eyes were locked on him. Qin Feiyang took out a facial restoration pill and handed it to Lin Chong. After Lin Chong took it, he quickly restored his original appearance. Lin Han's eyes turned cold and shouted, Lin Chong, you are really bold. Don't forget that you have signed the agreement to sever the relationship between father and daughter. Lin Chang's face suddenly showed a look of fear. You forced the father and daughter to sign the agreement, and you still have the nerve to mention it? Let me tell everyone that the person behind me is Lin Yi's biological father. Qin Feiyang stood in front of Lin Chong, blocking Lin Han's gaze, and sneered. Forced? Everyone looked at each other, and their faces showed a look of realization. That's right. If Lin Han didn't do this, then the one who benefited the most was not him, but Lin Yi's father. At that time, this branch family master was very likely to climb over Lin Han's head. In fact, this kind of thing was very common. It was also a kind of unspoken rule. Because the main family's power was too great, the branch family did not dare to resist. But this time, the Lin family was very unlucky to provoke Qin Feiyang, the evildoer. As for Lin Han, his face was gloomy to the extreme. King Yen also frowned. With his intelligence, he could immediately imagine what was going to happen next. And these things absolutely could not happen. Chapter 196. Thinking of this, King Yen hurriedly walked towards Lin Chong. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. What is he doing? King Yen smiled and said, Little brother, I want to talk to him. Can you step aside? Since the other party was so polite, what else could he say? He could only step aside. King Yen grabbed Lin Chang's hand and blamed himself. I'm really ashamed. I didn't invite you to Yi and my son's wedding. Brother Lin, please forgive me. Fatso whispered, Boss, something might be wrong. Qin Feiyang's pupils constricted, and he looked at Lin Chong without blinking. Lin Chong was at a loss at this moment. A person like him, who lived at the bottom, would never meet such a big shot in his life. But now, this big shot actually put down his face and apologized to him in person? He was really flattered. King Yen smiled and said, Brother Lin, I'm deeply sorry for what Lin Han did. But as you can see, my son really likes Yi. Why don't you fulfill their wish? This, Lin Chong looked at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang shook his head gently. King Yan's eyes flashed, and he continued to smile. Brother Lin, as long as you nod your head now, the palace will be your home from now on. You can come and go as you wish. After saying that, he turned to look at the eldest prince and shouted, What are you doing? Come and greet your future father-in-law. The eldest prince shuddered and quickly ran to Lin Chong. He bowed and said, Your son-in-law pays his respects to father-in-law. The word father-in-law made Lin Chang's heart waver. Qin Feiyang looked at Lin Yi. Her face was full of pleading. His eyes darkened, and he said to Lin Chong, "Please consider Yi's feelings." Lin Chong hesitated. In the end, he looked at Qin Feiyang and smiled. "I think that after Yi marries into the royal family, the eldest prince will definitely treat her well. As Yi's good friend, you should send your blessings, right?" Bastard! Fatso was furious. Lu Hong's face was also filled with anger. Lin Yi slumped to the ground on the spot. Her tears fell like rain. But Qin Feiyang smiled. However, this smile was very bitter. He clearly knew that Lin Chong was a vile person who only cared about profits. Yet he still hoped that Lin Chong would turn the situation around. How ironic! Serves you right. Lin Han laughed in a gloating manner. Although Lin Chong had gained a huge advantage, he could make Lin Chong disappear from Yen City as long as he paid a small price. At that time, as Lin Yi's adoptive father, he could still get benefits. The king of Yen also heaved a sigh of relief. As long as Lin Chong agreed, even Qin Feiyang would have no reason to object to the wedding. He smiled. "Brother Lin, please take a seat." "Thank you, Prince of Yen." Lin Chong cupped his hands and walked towards the main seat with the king of Yen and the first prince, talking and laughing. The moment he sat on the main seat, his vanity exploded. He completely forgot himself and didn't look at Qin Feiyang again. The first prince walked to Lin Yi's side and smiled. "Yi, don't worry. I will treat you well. Get up quickly. It's too disgraceful in public." Lin Yi slowly got up and looked up at Qin Feiyang. Her eyes were full of despair. She turned back to her seat without saying a word. Qin Feiyang's heart couldn't help but feel a stab of pain. His hands were clenched tightly. Wolf King said sternly, "Little Qin Zi, Brother Wolf will kill this scum." "No need." Qin Feiyang shook his head. Luo Qingzhu said. Lin Chong nodded. "This matter is a foregone conclusion. Don't make trouble. If you really can't stand it, go back first." A foregone conclusion. Qin Feiyang was silent. Ling Yunfei patted him on the shoulder and comforted. "Qingzhu is right. You have done your best. I believe Lin Yi will not blame you." Fatso said, "Bro, let's go." "All of you back off," Qin Feiyang suddenly said. His eyes were extremely sharp. Ling Yunfei and the others looked at each other helplessly and retreated to the side. Yan Nanshan and others also frowned and returned to their seats, one after another. The first prince got up and looked at Qin Feiyang. He said angrily, "What else do you want?" Lin Chong was also displeased. "Feiyang, Uncle only knows that you care about Yi very much. But isn't it inappropriate to continue making trouble like this?" "Uncle?" Qin Feiyang sneered. "Don't call me so affectionately. I am not familiar with you." Lin Chang's expression stiffened, and he suddenly fell into an awkward situation. King Yen said, "Qin Feiyang, if you still don't stop, I can only ask you to leave." Qin Feiyang glanced at them one by one. All of a sudden, he grabbed his shirt and tore it hard. With a poof, the shirt was torn, revealing a strong upper body. The king of Yen was enraged. He shouted, "Qin Feiyang, do you know that what you are doing now is humiliating the royal family in public?" Yan Nanshan and others also frowned. This move was indeed inappropriate. "Quick, look at his chest. Why is there a white mark?" Suddenly, someone exclaimed, "Mark?" Everyone fixed their eyes on it. There was indeed a mark. The shape was like a door, exuding a hazy white brilliance. But what is this mark? Qin Feiyang tore his shirt. Did he want them to see this mark? No, this is not an ordinary mark. Could it be Jiang? Jingyi suddenly got up and looked at Qin Feiyang in disbelief. Seeing Jiang Jingyi's huge reaction, the others were also surprised. Yan Nanshan was also suspicious. All of a sudden, he seemed to have thought of something and stood up abruptly. His eyes shone with an aggressive light. "I know. That is a potential mark." He enunciated each word with great difficulty. "What? A potential mark?" All the powerhouses and family masters stood up in unison. Their faces were filled with shock and horror. This lad had actually broken through the extreme martial artist realm and opened the first level of the Gate of Potential. Unbelievable. It was simply unbelievable. In a small place like the county of Yen, the extreme martial artist realm was only a legend. No one had ever broken through it. At this moment, the legend had become a reality and was standing right in front of them. One could imagine how strong the impact on their souls was. Even Ling Yunfei, Feng Lingair, Luo Qingzhu, Fatso, and the rest were dumbfounded. The extreme martial artist realm. They had not even thought about it. This lad was too heaven-defying. His talent in alchemy was already beyond their reach. Now, even his martial arts talent was so shocking. How were they supposed to live? How many more secrets was he hiding? Qin Feiyang's expression was very calm as he took out a jade box from his universe bag. Everyone looked at the jade box in unison. They were all wondering if the item in the jade box had something to do with him breaking through the extreme martial artist realm. Qin Feiyang opened the jade box. A rich, medicinal fragrance wafted in all directions. It's elixirs. Everyone's eyes trembled. There were a total of 3 elixirs. They were blood red, and the elixir patterns were glaring. Could these 3 elixirs be refined from those herbs? Steward, Li mumbled to himself. White-eyed wolf, come with me. Qin Feiyang called out and turned to leave in big strides. Wolf King's eyes lit up, and he quickly followed. They left. Everyone was stunned. However, the man and wolf did not leave. After walking for a distance, they stopped. Qin Feiyang turned to Yan Nanshan and cupped his fists. Temple Master, I'll leave it to you. He's really a man of his word. Yan Nanshan smiled bitterly. It seemed that this lad would not stop today if he did not ruin this wedding. However, he was really looking forward to seeing if Qin Feiyang could break through the extreme martial artist realm. No, it should be the extreme martial artist realm. The second level of the Gate of Potential. He landed in the middle of the square, 100 meters away from the man and wolf. Qin Feiyang took out a potential elixir and looked down at Wolf King with a smile. Are you ready? Wolf King drooled and said angrily, Nonsense. Hurry up and give it to Brother Wolf. Qin Feiyang smiled and handed the potential elixir over. Wolf King rolled his tongue and swallowed it. Qin Feiyang also quickly swallowed a potential elixir. He closed the jade box and kept it in his universe bag. Roar! Immediately, Wolf King howled suddenly. The tendons and bones all over his body bulged, and his eyes turned bloodshot. Qin Feiyang was the same. His teeth were bared and his facial features were distorted. The man and wolf felt as if countless steel needles were piercing into their bodies, causing them so much pain that they wished they were dead. Even the pores on their bodies were bleeding. In the blink of an eye, the man and wolf were drenched in blood. Qin Feiyang gritted his teeth and said, Temple Master, begin! Huff! Yan Nanshan exhaled and his expression became extremely serious. A terrifying aura rushed out of his body. It turned into a monstrous wave that drowned the man and wolf instantly. For the man and wolf, it was undoubtedly one disaster after another. Roar! Wolf King howled in pain. Its colossal body was trembling madly. Bear with it, Qin Feiyang shouted. The pain this time was dozens or even hundreds of times more painful than when he broke through the extreme martial artist realm. But he gritted his teeth and persevered. Wolf King roared. Was it the same for your first time? Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. The first time he also took the potential elixir. But the difference was the potential elixir that Uncle Yuan gave him had a dragon-shaped core qi. According to the Elixir Sutra, elixirs that produced a dragon-shaped core qi far surpassed supreme grade elixirs. It could be said that it was a divine elixir. The effects of divine elixirs and supreme-grade elixirs were naturally different. Therefore, he only experienced some pain back then and successfully broke through the extreme martial artist realm. As for the supreme-grade potential elixir that he refined, the Elixir Sutra recorded that it required the assistance of a very strong aura and the medicinal effect of the supreme-grade potential elixir. Only by digging out all aspects could one break through the extreme realm. The pain he faced was naturally incomparable to the first time. In fact, if his willpower was not firm enough, he would die on the spot. Wolf King was facing such a crisis now. It was too uncomfortable. In its heart, it could not help but have the urge to commit suicide. That way it would be free. White-eyed wolf, hang in there even if you die. Seeing that the situation was not good, Qin Feiyong hurriedly used a telepathic voice transmission to shout at Wolf King. I can't, Brother Wolf, can't hold on anymore. Wolf King muttered, his voice filled with weakness and powerlessness. Chapter 197. Oh no! Qin Feiyong panicked. He was able to hold on because he had experienced it once and was mentally prepared. However, Wolf King had never faced such pain before. He should not be so anxious. He should have let Wolf King watch him break through the martial master realm first. That way, Wolf King could be prepared in advance. Brother Wolf, have you forgotten how the wolves died? Don't you want to avenge them? Have you forgotten the oath we made back then? If you give up now, they won't be able to rest in peace, and they'll die with hatred in their hearts. Don't count on me. I won't avenge you. If you dare to die, I will let the Lin family live freely. Qin Feiyong roared telepathically. The Lin family, Wolf King murmured. The scene of what happened in Iron Ox Town surfaced in his mind. Yes, Brother Wolf hasn't destroyed the Lin family yet. How can I die? If I die now, little Qin Zi will look down on Brother Wolf. Brother Wolf, you have to work hard to survive. A strong desire to survive surged in its heart. Its consciousness quickly shook off the darkness. His large pupils were filled with a resolute light, and his fighting spirit was high. Roar! It roared angrily and took a step forward. What? Yan Nanshan was dumbfounded. How could he still move under his pressure? Jiang Jingyi and the others were also dumbfounded. They could not believe it. When Wolf King took its third step, boom, a muffled rumble exploded within its body. Following that, streaks of dazzling white light burst forth from its forehead. If one were to remove its hair, they would be shocked to find that a door-shaped mark was quickly forming. That's right. It succeeded. At the same time, its aura suddenly skyrocketed. Under this terrifying pressure, it not only broke through the martial master realm, but also raised its cultivation to a higher level. Yan Nanshan waved his hand and released his battle aura. It swept up Wolf King and flew to the beautiful woman. Wolf King didn't even have the strength to stand up. He lay on the ground weakly. Ling Yunfei hurriedly ran over, took out a top-grade healing pill and fed it to Wolf King. Then he said excitedly, Brother Wolf, you've done it. You're now the second person in the entire county of Yen to break through the limits of a martial artist. Brother Wolf is a handsome wolf, don't be mistaken. Wolf King rolled his eyes at him, but he was also very excited. At this moment, everyone was also looking at Wolf King with fervent eyes. Wolf King, who had opened the door to his potential, had a limitless future. Boom! At this moment, another low rumble resounded in the square. Everyone looked over. At this moment, Qin Feiyong was covered in blood. However, the potential imprint on his chest was shining brightly. In the next instant, the white light suddenly turned black. Seeing this, Yan Nanshan was overjoyed and quickly withdrew his imposing manner. Qin Feiyong followed, half kneeling on the ground, gasping for air. Yan Nanshan landed beside Qin Feiyong, took out a healing pill, and fed it to Qin Feiyong. Thank you, Temple Master. Qin Feiyang said gratefully. As long as you've succeeded, it's better than anything else. Yan Nanshan laughed heartily. A 16-year-old boy had opened the second level of the potential imprint. When this news spread, not only the county of Yan, but also the other 17 counties would be stirred up by a huge storm. It would even shock the state capital. Ignoring the blood on Qin Feiyang, Yan Nanshan personally helped him to the chair. The potential imprint on his chest had turned black, giving off a mysterious feeling. All the big shots and patriarchs stared fixedly at Qin Feiyang. Their eyes were filled with fanaticism. I'll take them to wash up. Yan Nanshan came to the beautiful woman and said. Then he took Qin Feiyang and Wolf King into the sky and quickly disappeared from everyone's sight. This place was in an uproar. Everyone's face was full of disbelief. Ma Cheng and the other two slumped on the chair powerlessly at this moment. For the nether demonic flame, they actually forced away such a peerless genius? Why is this? Why were they so stupid in the beginning? Not to mention the value of this child. Just the medicinal pill was enough to make the Danwang Hall's edge suppress any force. But they personally pushed this person into the arms of Marshal Emperor Hull. At this moment, their intestines were green with regret. They wanted to shout, "Is there a regret pill in the world?" "Brother Feiyang, I'm so proud of you," Lin Yi whispered. There was finally color in her empty eyes. However, Lin Chang's eyes looked a little gloomy. He looked at King Yen and smiled. "Let's get the two children married while he's not here. Wait for him to come back," King Yen said without hesitation. Lin Chang's smile froze, and an uneasy premonition emerged in his heart. The eldest prince frowned, walked to King Yen and sat down. He whispered, "Father, are you going to let me give up Lin Yi?" King Yen lowered his head and remained silent. About 100 breaths passed. Yan Nanshan returned with a man and a wolf. Qin Feiyang didn't talk nonsense. He took out the jade box, looked at King Yen and said, "I will use this medicinal pill to exchange for Lin Yi. Think about it." After speaking, he put the jade box on the table next to Yan Nanshan. Everyone's heart shuddered. This was an irresistible temptation. Potential pill. The eldest prince's body also trembled. He looked up at the jade box, his eyes full of desire. King Yen pondered for a moment, looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, "Why do you have to help Lin Yi? Do you really like her?" Everyone also looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. Qin Feiyang said, "I treat her as a sister." Lin Yi was originally very happy and looking forward to it. But when she heard this, she couldn't help but feel sad. King Yen shook his head and said, "You have sacrificed so much just to treat her as a sister. I really admire you." He lowered his head and pondered for a moment. Finally, he made up his mind and looked at Qin Feiyang. "Okay, I will cancel their wedding. You can take Lin Yi away at any time." Lin Chang's gaze trembled. He hurriedly got up and looked at King Yen. "I have made up my mind." King Yen said expressionlessly. Lin Chang slumped on the chair, his face pale. Qin Feiyang smiled. He strode to Lin Yi and said with a smile, "Girl, I have let you suffer." Lin Yi shook her head. Tears couldn't stop flowing. Qin Feiyang stretched out his hand, wiped the tears on her cheeks and smiled. "Let's go. Today is our birthday. We have to celebrate it." Lin Yi nodded and asked, "What about my father?" Lin Chang shuddered. He got up, grabbed Qin Feiyang's hand and begged, "Feiyang, Uncle knows his mistake. Please forgive Uncle." Qin Feiyang shook him off indifferently. He looked at Fatso and others and said, "Take Yi away first." "Understood." Fatso smiled. "Let's go." Lu Hong stepped forward, pulled Lin Yi and walked out of the square. Everyone consciously retreated to the side and opened up a path for him. After they left, Qin Feiyang turned to look at Lin Chang. Lin Chang said anxiously, Feiyong, I was just muddle-headed at that time. Don't blame Uncle, okay? Qin Feiyong kicked him directly in the stomach. Plop! Lin Chong lay on the ground on the spot, curling up in pain. You should be glad that you are Yi's father. Otherwise, you won't even have the chance to wail now. In the future, don't come to me again and don't go to Yi again, because you don't deserve to be her father. Qin Feiyong said indifferently, then turned and walked toward Yan Nanshan and others. Lin Chong got up awkwardly and half knelt on the ground. Looking at Qin Feiyong's back, he roared, "People walk to higher places and water flows to lower places. What did I do wrong? I know you clearly. You will never have the chance to make a meteoric rise in this life." Qin Feiyong turned his head and glanced at him contemptuously. He walked to Yan Nanshan and others and smiled. "Temple Master, Elder One, Elder Ji, why don't we have a few drinks together?" "Sure." The three nodded without hesitation. "What about us? Aren't you inviting us?" Stewardly looked at him unhappily. "Don't forget, I helped you just now," Jiang Jingyi said coldly. "Ah." Qin Feiyong was stunned and smiled bitterly. "There are many things in Treasure Pavilion. I thought you were going back. Since you are not busy, then this junior sincerely invites the two seniors." Busy, they were definitely busy. But no matter how busy they were, they had to build a good relationship with this lad. At the very least, they had to find out the name of the elixir. "King of Yen, we will take our leave." Jiang Jingyi and Yan Nanshan stood up and cupped their hands to the King of Yen. Then they left with Qin Feiyong and others. "King of Yen, we will take our leave too." Ma Cheng and the other two soared into the sky and disappeared. The masters of the various families also led their men to bid farewell to the King of Yen. The crowd outside the square also dispersed quickly. After a while, only the King of Yen and the Lin family were left in the square. There were also two outsiders. One was Shen Chong and the other was Lin Chong. But no one cared about the two of them. Even the three giants of the Martial Imperial Hall did not look at Shin Chong before they left. The first prince ran over and carried the jade box to the King of Yen as if he had obtained a treasure. The King of Yen took it in his hands, and his eyes lit up. The red-haired old man was also very eager. He cupped his hands and said, "King of Yen, I am really sorry to have caused you so much trouble today." Lin Han and the noblewoman also hurriedly apologized. The King of Yen waved his hand and said with a smile, "It's okay. As long as we can get this elixir, everything else is a small matter. Also, don't provoke Qin Feiyong in the future." Lin Han said, "Then wouldn't Bailey have died for nothing? Can't you just have another one?" The King of Yen glared at him angrily and said, "I will tell you clearly. In less than 3 days, the state capital will send someone here. Qin Feiyong's future achievements will be higher than yours and mine." State capital? Lin Han's body trembled. The red-haired old man also had a look of fear. "I have said everything that needs to be said. You guys can think about what to do." After the King of Yen finished speaking, he soared into the sky and flew towards the palace. Seeing that the first prince was about to enter the palace, Shin Chong hurriedly chased after him and said, "Your Highness, what should I do now?" "It has nothing to do with me." The first prince looked at him disdainfully and left without looking back. At the same time, Lin Chong also knelt in front of Lin Han and begged, "Master, please pity me and help me, okay?" "Pity you?" Lin Han directly slapped Lin Chang's face and said with a cold smile, "Who do you think you are? Why should I pity you?" After saying that, he kicked him again. The red-haired old man reached out and stopped him. He lowered his head and looked at Lin Chong. He said calmly, "From now on, the branch of the Iron Bull Town has nothing to do with the Lin family. You can fend for yourself." Whoosh! After saying that, the red-haired old man waved his hand and led the Lin family away. In this way, Only Lin Chong and Shin Chong were left in the entire square. Chapter 198. Flying Phoenix Restaurant. When Qin Feiyang and the others entered the lobby, the restaurant owner personally came out to greet them. Moreover, he immediately asked the waiter to send away all the guests. All day long, he only served Qin Feiyang and the others. Throughout the day, all the family heads in Yen City came to visit one after another. The threshold of the Flying Phoenix restaurant was almost broken. Furthermore, each of them had prepared a huge gift. They claimed that it was a birthday gift for Qin Feiyang, but in fact, they took this opportunity to curry favor. Qin Feiyang did not refuse them and asked Fatso and Lu Hong to accept them all. The two were overjoyed. Finally, they had some savings. Later, even the eldest prince and Lin Hao came. Zhao Shuang'er also woke up later. When she heard Qin Feiyang kicked Lin Hua's balls, she couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh. As for Steward Li, he always wanted to get something out of Qin Feiyang's mouth, but he couldn't pry open Qin Feiyang's mouth until the banquet was over. The bright moon hung high. The soothing lake in the middle of the night was quiet and peaceful. Qin Feiyang sat by the lake, looking at the calm lake with a faint smile on his face. This time, not only did he save Lin Yi, but he also announced his identity. From now on, there was no need to hide anymore. The most important thing was that he successfully opened the second level of the Gate of Potential. His cultivation speed would undoubtedly rise to another level. Awoo! Suddenly, a wolf howl came from the opposite side. Qin Feiyang looked up and saw a vague shadow running over from the stone bridge. Who else could it be but Wolf King? Wolf King ran to Qin Feiyang's side and laughed. It's so cool. This is the life Brother Wolf wants. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled. Have you been wild enough for today? As soon as they left the square, Wolf King slipped away alone. I wonder what he has been doing all day. It's still early. The Wolf King chuckled. Boss, the results are out. At this moment, Fatso ran out of the attic excitedly. As soon as he came back, he started to sort out the gifts he had received today. How is it? Qin Feiyang asked. Fatso said, including the 10 million gold coins sent by the first prince, our total harvest today is 120 million gold coins. So many. Wolf King was shocked. Qin Feiyang smiled. Almost all the families in Yen City are here. Each of them has several 100,000, so it's normal to gather 100 million. What else is there besides gold coins? They're pretty smart. Other than gold coins, they've also sent medicinal herbs. Fat Lord calculated that there are a total of 23 sets of herbs for the red fire glazed pill. I've also gathered 2 sets of medicinal ingredients for the potential pill. Let's not talk about the rest. According to Fat Lord's estimation, all the herbs added together are worth at least 200 to 300 million. Fatso said excitedly. Qin Feiyang smiled. So, we've become rich all of a sudden. Of course, I'm afraid that even the Lin family can't compare with our assets now. The fatty was full of heroism. He chuckled and moved to Qin Feiyang's side, saying, Boss, look at how hard Lord Fatty is working. Should I? Before he finished, Wolf King said angrily, In your dreams, Brother Wolf still needs to open the second level of the Gate of Potential. Fatso's face fell immediately, and he begged, Brother Wolf, you can't do this. Qin Feiyang looked at Wolf King and smiled faintly. You can't open the second level now. Why? Wolf King was puzzled. Qin Feiyang smiled, because you've broken through. The next time you open it, you'll be a 9-star martial arts grandmaster. Damn it. Why didn't you say so earlier? Brother Wolf wouldn't have broken through. Wolf King stared at him angrily. Then Jiang Laoda, what about me? Fatso looked at Qin Feiyang expectantly. Qin Feiyang said, Don't worry, I won't forget you and Lu Hong. When I become a 9-star martial master, I'll give it to you. In addition, continue to buy the herbs for the potential pill as much as you can. Understood. Fatso nodded. Qin Feiyang's face suddenly darkened, and he said angrily, "Give me 1 million pocket money first." Fatso's face twitched. 1 million was just pocket money. Now he was really rich. After taking out 1 million gold coins and handing it to Qin Feiyang, Fatso gave Qin Feiyang the herbs for the potential pill and the red fireglass pill, and then he turned and entered the attic. After a while, Lu Hong walked out. Qin Feiyang asked, "How is Yi?" "She's already asleep." Lu Hong smiled faintly and said, "What do you plan to do with her?" "Arrangements." Qin Feiyang frowned. Lu Hong sighed. "I can feel that her feelings for you are getting deeper and deeper. If you really only treat her as a sister, you can't keep her by your side." Qin Feiyang's eyes darkened. He really hadn't thought about this point. Fortunately, Lu Hong reminded him. Lu Hong suggested, "Why don't we secretly send her to the Martial Imperial Palace in Star Moon City? This way, not only can we ensure her safety, but we can also prevent Lin Chang from harassing her." Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment and nodded. "All right, let's do it this way. Tomorrow I'll go find Luo Qingzhu and ask when they will return to Star Moon City. You must be tired during this period of time, so go and rest." Lu Hong nodded. Just as she turned around, she looked back at Qin Feiyang and pursed her lips with a smile. "Do you need pocket money?" Qin Feiyang's face twitched as he said with a dark face, "I just asked Fatso for 1 million. Lu Hong smiled and said, "Is that so? Then you should rest early too." "Wait." Qin Feiyang stopped her and took out a wooden box from his Qingquan bag. There were 5 jade pendants inside. It was the flaming phoenix that he bought from the jewelry store. Qin Feiyang took out a jade pendant and threw it to Lu Hong, smiling. "For you." "For me?" Lu Hong caught it and felt a little uncomfortable. Qin Feiyang hurriedly said, "Don't misunderstand. This is not a token of love." "Then what's the point?" Lu Hong was puzzled. "Yes. If something happens to you in the future and you can't use the image crystal, you can find a way to ask someone to send the jade pendant to me. At that time, I will know that you are in danger. Speaking of which, it's also a token. Give this to Fatso." Qin Feiyang said with a faint smile. He took out another one and threw it to Lu Hong. "So that's how it is." Lu Hong suddenly understood. She took the 2 jade pendants and turned to leave. Qin Feiyang looked down at the remaining 3 jade pendants. 1 for Yi, 1 for Ling Yunfei. Why don't I give the last one to Feng Ling Heir? Before Feng Cheng died, he asked him to take care of Feng Ling Heir. He also promised. He couldn't go back on his word. The night was as dark as ink. In an inconspicuous restaurant, in a private room, Lin Chang and Shen Chang reeked of alcohol. There were more than a dozen empty wine jars on the table and floor. "I tried every means to let my daughter marry into the royal family, but in the end it was all in vain. I even offended countless people. Why do I have to do this?" Lin Chang sighed. "Aren't I the same? I wanted to curry favor with the first prince, but in the end, I did manage to curry favor with the first prince, and the Martial Imperial Palace abandoned me. Where should I go in the future?" Shen Chang closed his eyes in pain. It was too late for regrets. Creak! The door was suddenly pushed open. A black-clothed man walked in and looked at the 2 of them. "I can help you. Who are you?" "Who allowed you to come in?" The 2 of them said angrily. The black-clothed man said expressionlessly, "Don't ask me who I am. Just know that I can help you." "How?" "If you have the ability, go get rid of Lin Han and let me be the head of the Lin family." Lin Chang said in disdain. "That's right. If you are so awesome, then go and help me kill Qin Feiyang and the first prince." Shen Chang mocked. The black-clothed man said, "As long as you join the organization, it's only a matter of time." The 2 of them looked at each other, and their drunkenness disappeared. They turned to look at the black-clothed man and said in a low voice, "Really?" The black-clothed man nodded. "What organization?" Shinchong asked. "Blood Slaughter Palace." The black-clothed man said word by word. "Blood Slaughter Palace?" Shinchong frowned and said, "Why haven't I heard of this name?" The black-clothed man said, "Have you heard of the Blood Slaughter Token?" "What?" Shinchong suddenly stood up, his eyes filled with shock. The black-clothed man said, "The Blood Slaughter Token is the identity token of the Blood Slaughter Palace. The palace master of the Blood Slaughter Palace is a battle emperor. Moreover, there are 2 battle emperors in Yen City who have joined the Blood Slaughter Palace." Shinchong's pupil shrank and asked, "Who are the 2 battle emperors?" The black-clothed man said, "This is a secret. You don't have the right to know. I'm telling you this because I want you to know how powerful the Blood Slaughter Palace is." Shinchong pondered for a moment and nodded. "All right, I'll join. What about you?" The black-clothed man looked at Lin Chong indifferently. Lin Chong said, "If the Blood Slaughter Palace can really help me become the patriarch of Yen City's Lin family, I will immediately agree to join." "I can assure you," the black-clothed man said. "I'll join," Lin Chong said. The black-clothed man said, "Well, now I'll give you the first task. Find a way to capture Lin Yi for me." "What?" Lin Chang's face changed. The black-clothed man said, "The rules of the Blood Slaughter Palace are unconditional obedience." "No." Lin Chang shook his head and said, "She is my daughter. I can't do this." The black-clothed man's eyes flashed coldly and said, "If you don't do it, you will die now. It's your choice." Shin Chong said, "Lin Chong, just agree. If your daughter is gone, you can have another one. But if you lose your life, then you are gone. Besides, how can you become the patriarch of the Lin family without some sacrifice?" Lin Chong lowered his head and struggled in his heart. Shun Chong said again, "I don't think Lin Yi treats you as a father. Otherwise, why hasn't she come to visit you until now? Since she is so heartless, why do you have to worry so much?" Lin Chang's eyes flashed fiercely. He nodded and said, "Okay, I will do it." The black-clothed man looked at Shin Chong with appreciation. He took out 2 blood slaughter tokens and threw them on the table. "I will only give you 3 days. If you don't complete the task, you will all die. At that time, I will take the initiative to find you." After saying that, the black-clothed man turned and left. Lin Chong asked younger brother Shin, "What is this Blood Slaughter Palace?" Shin Chong shook his head and said, "I don't know, but there are 3 combat emperors. It is definitely not simple. Hurry up and think about how to trick your daughter out of the Martial Imperial Hall. Tomorrow, I will go to the Martial Imperial Hall to find her. I don't believe that she is so desperate that she won't even see me." Lin Chong snorted coldly. "Well, for the sake of safety, I will buy some phantom form pills first. You stay here and try to come up with a foolproof plan." Shen Chong grabbed a blood slaughter token and left quickly. Chapter 199. The next morning, Qin Feiyang walked out of the castle. After opening the 2nd level of the Gate of Potential, he no longer copied the 6-word divine formula. In addition, he refined the best qi amassing pill. His cultivation speed had greatly increased. In just one night, his cultivation had improved a lot. Walking out of the attic, after taking a few deep breaths of fresh air, he turned his head to look at the balcony next door and smiled. "Elder Shi, good morning." Although all the crises had been resolved now, Yan Nanshan still let Shizheng continue to protect him. "Good morning." Shizheng smiled. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "I will have to trouble Elder to take us to the treasure pavilion later." "Okay." Elder Shi nodded. "Brother Feiyang, At this moment, Lin Yi walked out of the attic quickly. She was wearing a snow-white dress. Her cheeks were glowing, looking youthful and energetic. "Did you sleep well last night?" Qin Feiyong walked up and smiled. Lin Yi nodded and hugged Qin Feiyong's arm naturally. Fatso and Lu Hong followed and saw Lin Yi's dependence on Qin Feiyong. They couldn't help but shudder. Qin Feiyong turned his head and glanced at the smiling Lin Yi. He felt a little melancholy in his heart. He took out a potential pill and 2 flame phoenixes, handed them to Lu Hong, and said, "Send them to Ling Yunfei and Feng Ling Air." "Okay." Lu Hong nodded. Then, Qin Feiyong took out a phantom pill and let Lin Yi consume it. After changing his appearance casually, he looked up at Shi Zheng and smiled. "Elder Shi, sorry to trouble you." Shi Zheng got up and jumped down from the balcony. Then he led Qin Feiyong and the other 2 and rushed outside. "Brother Feiyong, where are we going?" Lin Yi was puzzled. "To the treasure pavilion." Qin Feiyong smiled and did not explain much. Not long after the 3 of them left the Martial King Hall, Lin Chong arrived at the entrance. Elder Chu stood in front of him and frowned. "What are you doing here?" Lin Chong was now considered a celebrity in Swallow City. However, his notoriety spread far and wide. Lin Chong bowed and said, "I want to see my daughter." "Sir, please make an exception. Your daughter isn't in the Martial Imperial Hall." "Scram," Elder Chu said expressionlessly. "Impossible. My daughter is with Qin Feiyong. If she isn't in the Martial King Hall, where else could she be? Could it be that Qin Feiyong is meddling in this?" Lin Chong said furiously. "Qin Feiyong is not only a top-grade alchemist, but also a martial arts genius who has unlocked his potential imprint. His future is limitless. As long as he says the word, the entire Yen City won't let you go. Is there a need to interfere?" "Scram. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite." Elder Chu shouted harshly. Lin Chang's body trembled. He glanced at the depths of the Martial Emperor Hall unwillingly, before turning around and leaving. A short while later, Xin Chang came again. As a result, he was also stopped outside by Elder Chu. Xin Chang's face sank and asked, "Elder Chu, what do you mean by this?" Elder Chu said indifferently, "Last night, the Hall Master personally ordered to expel you from the Martial Emperor Hall, so you are no longer a disciple of the Martial Emperor Hall. You are not eligible to enter the Martial Emperor Hall again." "Why? Is it just because I didn't join forces with Qin Feiyong and the others in the arena?" Xin Chang's body and mind trembled as he roared again and again. He originally planned to enter the Martial Emperor Hall to inquire about Lin Yi's whereabouts, but he didn't expect to receive such bad news. The eldest prince even gave you the Overlord Fist. What else do you want to quibble about? Scram, my Martial Emperor Hall doesn't have a traitor like you. By the way, hand over your identity token. Elder Chu said faintly. Xin Chang took out the identity token and crushed it with force. He glanced at the Martial Emperor Hall with resentment, then turned and left without looking back. In an alley, seeing Xin Chang come in, Lin Chang hurriedly said, "How is it? Did you find out?" Xin Chang said gloomily, "I was expelled from the Martial Emperor Hall." "Then what should we do now? We only have 3 days." Lin Chang was burning with anxiety. "Don't worry. I have an illusion pill here. I will disguise myself as another disciple and sneak into the Martial Emperor Hall. Wait for me here." Shen Chang took out an illusion pill, threw it into his mouth, and turned into a young man. He smiled coldly and walked toward the Martial Emperor Hall again. But when he entered the gate, Elder Chu appeared again and yelled, "Stop right there and hand over your identity token." And Shin Chang's body stiffened. He turned to look at Elder Chu and smiled. "Elder, it's me, Li Fei." Elder Chu smiled faintly. "I know it's you, but you have to take out your identity token and let me confirm it, because the Hall Master ordered that from today onwards, Everyone who enters the Martial Emperor Hall will be strictly investigated. Xinqiang frowned. Why do you want to do this? Isn't it because he is worried that someone will disguise as our Martial Emperor Hall's people and sneak in to harm Qin Feiyang? Elder Chu shook his head and smiled bitterly. Right now, this Qin Feiyang was simply the Hall Master's favorite. He was afraid that he would melt in his mouth or fall in his hands. So that's how it is. Xinqiang came to a realization and said with some difficulty, Elder Chu, my identity token is in the cultivation room and I forgot to take it. Can you make an exception? Forgot to take it? When every new disciple enters the Martial Emperor Hall, I will tell them to bring it with them. You've been in the Martial Emperor Hall for a few years. Why don't you remember this? Elder Chu said angrily. Elder, I didn't do it on purpose. It's because I left in a hurry that I forgot. Xinqiang lowered his head. If that's the case, then use the Heaven's Ice Stone to test it. After all, this is the Hall Master's order. I don't dare to be careless. Elder Chu took out a Heaven's Ice Stone. What? Xinqiang was shocked. He even took out the Heaven's Ice Stone. What should he do now? Elder, disciples suddenly remembered that there are still some things that I haven't finished. I'll go out again. He quickly found an excuse and turned to leave. Elder Chu frowned. Why did he feel that this person was a little abnormal today? Stop right there. Suddenly, he let out an explosive roar. Actually, he was just testing. Xinqiang panicked and immediately fled crazily. There's indeed a problem. Elder Chu's gaze turned cold and his battle chi surged. He chased after him in a few steps and grabbed Xinqiang's arm, pressing it on the Heaven's Ice Stone. Buzz! The Heaven's Ice Stone immediately emitted a bright light. Xinqiang recovered his true appearance in the next moment. He panicked and hurriedly knelt on the ground, begging, Elder, please spare my life. I just want to go in and take what belongs to me. I have no other intentions. Humph! Elder Chu snorted coldly and picked Xinqiang up like a little chick, walking towards the reception hall. Lin Chang, who was hiding in the alley, immediately fled in a panic. At the same time, Treasure Pavilion, VIP room, Manager Li and Jiang Jingyi were both there. Jiang Jingyi smiled. Why are you looking for us so early? Qin Feiyang said. Where are Qing Zhu and Shuang Er? Jiang Jingyi said, they are at the auction house. Do you want to go and take a look? Forget it. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled. He turned his head to look at Yi and said with a faint smile, I have something to discuss with the two seniors. You go and meet with them. Elder Shi, I'll have to trouble you to accompany her. Shizheng nodded. Lin Yi looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously, but she did not ask much. She bowed to Jiang Jingyi and Manager Li and left the VIP room with Shizheng. After Qin Feiyang turned around and closed the door, he walked to the coffee table and cupped his fist to Jiang Jingyi. Senior, I want to ask you for a favor. Say it, Jiang Jingyi said. Qin Feiyang said, I want Qing Zhu and the others to take Yi to the Martial Imperial Hall in Star Moon City. Why? Jiang Jingyi and Manager Li looked at each other and looked at him in confusion. Isn't the Martial Imperial Hall in Yan City better? With this kid's achievements, as long as he asks, Yan Nanshan will definitely not refuse. Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly and cupped his fist. This is Junior's personal privacy. Please don't ask too much. Other young people are trying to hook up with beautiful girls, but you are desperately pushing them away. I really don't know what is in your head all day long. Jiang Jingyi shook his head speechlessly and nodded. Okay, anyway, I have to go to Star Moon City later. I will take Lin Yi along the way, but I have a condition. What condition? Qin Feiyang was overjoyed. With Jiang Jingyi accompanying him, there would definitely be no problem along the way. Jiang Jingyi was silent for a while and smiled. Your relationship with Qin Xue seems to be unusual. If you have a chance, help me put in a few good words. If you can make her forgive me, I promise that you will benefit a lot. Ugh! Qin Feiyang was stunned. He never thought that Jiang Jingyi would put forward this condition. Just when he wanted to ask the reason, Jiang Jingyi shook his head and said, "This is also my personal privacy. Don't ask too much." "Okay, I will try my best." Qin Feiyang nodded. "I like straightforward young people." Jiang Jingyi laughed heartily, and then asked in puzzlement, "Kid, tell me, what's the name of the medicinal pill that you and the Wolf King took? Why have I never seen it before?" Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "Potential pill. You have seen the effect of it. It is to open the door of potential." "Manager," Li asked brightly, "is it refined from the medicinal herbs of the 9 Suns flower?" "If I say yes, won't you increase the price immediately?" Qin Feiyang sneered. Manager Li looked unhappy and said angrily, "Am I that kind of person? Don't worry, even if it's the 9 Suns flower, I will still sell it to you at the same price as before." Qin Feiyang glanced at him and said, "That's right. It's those 33 herbs." "I knew it." Manager Li slapped his thigh with a face full of anger. If he had known that those herbs could be refined into such a shocking medicinal pill, would he have sold it to Qin Feiyang for 40 million? Don't even think about it. That bastard was truly cunning. He kept it a secret and got such a huge bargain. "All right." Jiang Jingyi stood up and looked at Manager Li. "I'll have to trouble you here in Swallow City. Send me a message if there's anything." "You're leaving now?" Manager Li was stunned. "Yes." Jiang Jingyi nodded and looked at Qin Feiyang. "If you want to sell the potential pill, you have to go through my precious treasure pavilion. Otherwise, you won't even have the chance to get the herbs in the future." "All right." Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. Although Jiang Jingyi was domineering, he did have the qualifications. Chapter 200. Jiang Jingyi secretly left Yen City with Lin Yi, Luo Qingzhu, and Zhao Shuanger. This was requested by Qin Feiyang. He didn't want Lin Chang to harass Lin Yi again. Before leaving, Qin Feiyang handed the last flaming phoenix to Lin Yi. It took him a lot of effort to persuade Lin Yi to go to Star Moon City. After sending them away, Qin Feiyang did not stay in Treasure Pavilion and returned to Martial Lord Hall with Shizhang. As soon as he returned to Martial Lord Hall, Elder Chu told him about Xin Chang. Law Enforcement Hall. Xin Chang knelt on the ground with a pale face. In front, Elder Wan and the beautiful woman sat on the chair, looking at Xin Chang intently. Their expressions were quite gloomy. Qin Feiyang walked into the hall, glanced at Xin Chang, looked at Elder Wan, and asked, "Elder, did you get anything?" "Take a look at what this is." Elder Wan threw a blood-red token to Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang looked down, and his face changed abruptly. He said in surprise, "Blood-killing token, where did you get it?" Elder Wan said, "I found it on him." Qin Feiyang turned to look at Xin Chang and said gloomily, "How did you get the blood-killing token?" Elder Wan shook his head and said, "Don't ask. His mouth is very tight. He won't say anything. I really want to kill him now." "Very tight?" Qin Feiyang sneered and said, "Killing him is too easy for him. I will immediately refine a calamity spirit pill to abolish his cultivation and let him slowly enjoy the feeling of being bullied." Shan Chang's eyes trembled and hurriedly said, "I really don't know why the blood-killing token is on me. I am innocent. Please believe me. As soon as Lin Chang left, you appeared. You even intended to sneak into Martial Lord Hall with the blood-killing token on you. Is this a coincidence? Do you believe it?" Qin Feiyang pursed his lips with a hint of ridicule. Xin Chang stammered. If it were him, he wouldn't believe it either. Qin Feiyang said, "I'll give you one last chance. Confess immediately." Xin Chang shook his head. "I don't know. I don't know anything." Stubborn. Qin Feiyang took out the Chang Shui and grabbed Xin Chang's hand. He smiled and said, "Let me tell you, I know a lot of ways to torture people. I guarantee that you will be satisfied. Now, I will chop your hand into pieces, bit by bit." After that, Qin Feiyang raised the Chang Shui and mercilessly swung it down. Shin Chang hurriedly said, I'll say. The blood slaughter token was given to me by a burly man in black. As expected of this brat, Elder Wan looked at each other and smiled. In fact, they had also thought of doing this, but due to their status, they could not do it. Black-clothed man? Qin Feiyang frowned and said, I want to know everything. Okay, I'll tell you everything. How could Shin Chang dare to hesitate? Blood Slaughter Palace? Elder Wan and Elder Wan looked at each other, their faces filled with bewilderment. Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice, Even the War Emperor has joined the Blood Slaughter Palace. It seems like this Blood Slaughter Palace is not simple. Elder Wan frowned. Shin Chang, who are those two War Emperor-s? I really don't know. Shin Chang shook his head. The beautiful woman said, Such an important secret. A small fry like him definitely wouldn't know. However, the number of War Emperor-s in Yen City can be counted on one hand, so it won't be difficult to find out. There are indeed very few War Emperor-s in Yen City, but everyone is an old fox, so it's not that easy to find out. Qin Feiyang shook his head thoughtfully. Qin Feiyang is right. We have to take this matter slowly. We can't rush it. Elder Wan nodded. Qin Feiyang suddenly looked at the two of them, his eyes flashing. Why are you looking at us? Are you suspecting us? Brat, this old man is telling you. Get rid of this idea as soon as possible. Otherwise, don't blame this old man for being ruthless. Elder Wan and Elder Wan's faces were full of anger. Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. Indeed, he was overthinking. If these two were really from the Blood Slaughter Palace, they would have already attacked him. After all, he often spent time alone with these two, so there were plenty of opportunities. Qin Feiyang thought for a while and said, Well, let's follow the vine and find the melon. First, we will find the black-clothed man. Anyway, they don't know that Yi has left Yen City. Elder Wan asked how. Qin Feiyang looked at Elder Ji and said with a smile, What they want is Yi, then we will give them Yi. Elder Ji frowned and said, Don't tell me you want me to disguise myself as Lin Yi. Qin Feiyang said, Yes, I want to know the origin of this Blood Slaughter Palace. Don't you two want to know? This, Elder Ji said with some embarrassment. I'm already so old. It's embarrassing for me to disguise myself as a young girl. Haha, Elder One couldn't help but laugh. Shin Chang asked cautiously, Qin Feiyang, I have said what I need to say. Can you let me go? Qin Feiyang said one last question. How do you contact the black-clothed man? Shin Chang shook his head and said, I don't know. He said that he will take the initiative to come to us. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and said, Well, you can go. Are you really letting me go? Shin Chang was taken aback. Elder Wan and Elder Wan were also a little stunned. However, just as Shin Chang was ecstatic and got up, Qin Feiyang held the Chang Shui in his hand and slashed Shin Chang's neck. Immediately, blood spurted out like a column. Shin Chang clutched his neck and looked at Qin Feiyang in disbelief. Qin Feiyang wiped the blood on the Chang Shui on Shin Chang's body and said indifferently, I'm sorry, I'm not a benevolent person. Bang! As soon as he finished speaking, Shin Chang also fell to the ground and died. Elder Wan said, Shizheng, come in and drag him out. Wipe the blood on the ground while you're at it. Shizheng, who was guarding outside the door, immediately ran in. The beautiful woman frowned and said, Feiyang, I didn't see the black-clothed man. Why did you kill him now? There's no use in keeping such a person. Moreover, with his IQ, he will definitely be exposed when he sees the black-clothed man. Qin Feiyang took out a magic form pill and directly changed into Shin Chang's appearance. So that's how it is. Elder Wan and Elder Wan looked at each other and smiled. This kid was really cunning. This disciple has a plan. We'll find Fatso and Lu Hong as well as Elder Chu to put on a show together. Qin Feiyong smiled and said. The three of them discussed secretly in the law enforcement hall. Late at night, a figure quietly slipped out of the Martial Imperial Hall. It was Qin Feiyong. On Qin Feiyong's back, he was carrying an unconscious woman. The face was Lin Yi, but in fact it was Elder Ji. She wasn't really unconscious. Elder Ji whispered, Is this plan really going to work? How do you know if you don't try? Elder, don't make any more noise. Qin Feiyong whispered. Shin Chong didn't have an image crystal, so the black-clothed man couldn't contact him at all. The only explanation was that the black-clothed man was most likely monitoring near the Martial Imperial Hall. Even if the black-clothed man wasn't there, he would send someone else. Sure enough, after Qin Feiyong ran away with Elder Ji on his back, a black figure walked out of an alley with a trace of suspicion in his eyes. It was the black-clothed man. Strange. Didn't Lin Chong say that Shin Chong was captured alive? Why did they capture Lin Yi now? Could it be a trap? The black-clothed man murmured secretly, but at this moment, Fatso and Lu Hong held torches and ran out of the Martial Imperial Hall breathlessly. Both of them looked panicked. What are you doing? Elder Chu also walked out and looked at the two in confusion. Fatso asked, Elder, have you seen Lin Yi? Lin Yi. Elder Chu was taken aback and asked, Isn't she with you? Fatso said anxiously, Lin Yi is gone. Lu Hong also exclaimed, She went to rest early in the evening. But when I went upstairs to check just now, she was gone. If anything happens to Lin Yi, Qin Feiyong will definitely not spare us. Don't worry. I have been in the reception hall all the time. I didn't see Lin Yi come out. She may be somewhere to relax. Let's go and find her. Elder Chu said. All right. Fatso nodded. Immediately, the three entered the Martial Imperial Hall and hid behind the reception hall. Elder Chu frowned and said, Do we need to do this? Obviously. The three of them were just acting before. Fatso smiled and said, Boss can't be wrong. There must be someone monitoring nearby. If we don't act this, the other party will be suspicious. Lu Hong smiled and said, Taking a step back, even if no one is monitoring, we won't lose anything. Elder Chu looked at the two in a daze and shook his head. Qin Feiyong, this kid is really thoughtful. Of course, our boss is known as a cunning little fox. Fatso smiled proudly. Do you know how to talk? If you don't, then shut up. Lu Hong glared at him angrily. Both Fatso and Elder Chu are looking for Lin Yi. It should be true. I didn't expect this Shen Chang to be quite capable. In the alley outside, the black-shirt macho man muttered in a low voice, walked out of the alley and chased after Qin Feiyong. Not long after, he saw Qin Feiyong and Elder Chu in front. However, he didn't go up immediately but followed behind the two from a distance. It was enough to see. He was a very suspicious person. The beautiful woman lay on Qin Feiyong's back and whispered, Qin Feiyong, I sense an aura behind us that has been following us. That means this person took the bait. Qin Feiyong whispered. The beautiful woman said, Do you want me to catch him now? Qin Feiyong whispered, It's better to be safe than sorry. Don't alert the enemy first. Wait for him to take the initiative to come up and confirm his identity. The street in the middle of the night was dead silent. The moonlight shone down, making everything appear hazy and hazy. The three of them, one in front and one behind, galloped on the street. After about half an hour, It shouldn't be a problem. The black-shirt macho man muttered and sped up. He stopped in front of Qin Feiyong and Elder Chu and frowned. Shin Chong, weren't you captured alive by Martial Emperor Hall? It must be him. Qin Feiyong stopped, and a cold light surged in his eyes. At the same moment, Elder Ji flicked his finger, and two battle auras broke through the air like lightning, passing through the legs of the black-shirt macho man. 2 bloody holes suddenly appeared. Blood splattered. Puff! Chapter 201. Qin Feiyang put down the beautiful woman. The two walked in front of the black-clothed man with a smile on their faces. The black-clothed man endured the pain and said gloomily, "Why did this happen?" "I'm sorry, Xin Chang is dead." Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. "Dead." The black-clothed man was stunned and said in surprise, "Then who are you?" "I don't have time to talk nonsense with you." Qin Feiyang looked at the beautiful woman and said, "Elder, take him back first." "Elder." The black-clothed man was shocked. He finally understood that this was a trap. However, the person who set this trap was too smart and put on a show for him. The beautiful woman grabbed the black-clothed man's clothes and twisted him up like a chick. She turned around and returned to the martial imperial palace. Whoosh! But just as she turned around, a sudden change occurred. A black arrow, like a poisonous snake bearing its fangs, pierced through the sky like lightning and went into the back of the black-clothed man's head and came out from between his eyebrows. Blood splashed in the sky. The black-clothed man died on the spot. Who? The beautiful woman was stunned, and then she suddenly shouted explosively as she grabbed Qin Feiyang and charged into the sky, and then she swept the surroundings with monstrous flames of rage. Qin Feiyang's face was also extremely gloomy. No matter how much they planned, they still failed in the end. It was really annoying. There was no one around. The two scanned the city below. They didn't find anyone suspicious. Qin Feiyang said regretfully, "Elder, there are too many hiding places below. I'm afraid we can't find them." The beautiful woman landed on the street with Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang immediately squatted on the ground and searched the black-clothed man's body. The beautiful woman also found the arrow. After looking for a moment, she said in a deep voice, "To dare to shoot this arrow under my nose, and to be able to do it silently, the strength of the person who shot the arrow is at least the same as mine." She then looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, "Did you find anything?" Qin Feiyang took out a Qinquan bag and a blood-killing token. Next, he carefully checked the Qinquan bag and shook his head at the beautiful woman. "There are no clues, not even the image crystal. It seems like this person is just a small fry. Let's go to that restaurant and see if Lin Chang is still there." The beautiful woman grabbed Qin Feiyang, turned into a stream of light, and quickly rushed to the restaurant. The restaurant was already closed, but he definitely couldn't stop the beautiful woman. The two of them directly broke through the door, but they did not find Lin Chang. Back at the Martial King Palace, the beautiful woman then ordered all the deacon elders to chase after Lin Chang. Jingxin Lake. Qin Feiyang walked into the loft. When Fatso and Lu Hong saw that his expression was not right, their hearts sank. Lu Hong asked, "Did you fail?" "No." Qin Feiyang shook his head, sat on the chair, rubbed his aching forehead, and sighed. The plan was very successful, but the black-clothed man was assassinated. The two of them looked at each other, their eyes filled with disbelief. Qin Feiyang crossed his arms over his chest, leaned back against the chair, lowered his head, and frowned. Yan Nanshan, the beautiful woman, Elder One, it was definitely impossible. It was also impossible for Jiang Jingyi and Manager Li, because if it was one of them, Shen Chang and Lin Chang would not know that Yi had already gone to the Star Moon City. Then only the Danwang Hall, the royal family, and the Lin family's ancestor were left. These three forces all had deep grudges with him. Who could it be? Lu Hong obediently brewed a pot of fragrant tea for Qin Feiyang to refresh his mind and relieve his fatigue. Boom! Suddenly, a terrifying aura descended from the sky above the martial imperial palace. Qin Feiyang and the other two suddenly stood up, their eyes filled with bewilderment. Following that, The three of them ran out of the loft and stood by the lake looking up at the sky. At that moment, their gazes trembled. Under the hazy moonlight, a white figure stood proudly in the sky. He was like a god that had descended to the mortal world. His aura was monstrous, shaking heaven and earth. So powerful. His aura is far more powerful than the palace masters. Fatso and Lu Hong could not help but tremble. It was not that they were timid, but the aura that the person exuded made them tremble instinctively. Someone from the state capital, Qin Feiyang, whispered. Although they could not see the person's face clearly, such a powerful aura could only belong to someone from the state capital. Fatso and Lin Chong were shocked. The state capital was the legendary holy land of martial arts. For insignificant people like them, it was something that did not exist at all. Even the big shots of the county of Yan might not have been to the state capital. Whoosh! At this moment, Yan Nanshan, Elder One, and the beautiful woman rushed into the sky and flew to the person, bowing and saying, "Greetings, sir." At the same time, the king of Yan, Patriarch Lin, Steward Li, and Ma Cheng also flew into the sky. Their target was the Martial Imperial Hall. The person replied and asked, "Where is Qin Feiyang that you were talking about?" "Sir, please follow me." Yan Nanshan dove toward the soothing lake. Swoosh! The four of them landed by the lake one after another, in front of Qin Feiyang and the other two. The beautiful woman waved her hand, and a wave of battle chi appeared, condensing into a palm-sized light ball that illuminated the surroundings. Qin Feiyang finally saw the person's face clearly. It was a middle-aged man with a square face, thick eyebrows, and a black eye patch over his left eye. He was rather burly and wore a long black robe. He looked majestic, as if he could uproot mountains and rivers. Yan Nanshan urged, "Qin Feiyang, hurry up and greet Sir Wang Hong from the state capital." "He is indeed from the state capital." A cold light flashed in Qin Feiyang's eyes. He walked in front of Wang Hong and cupped his fists. "Disciple Qin Feiyang greets sir." Wang Hong remained silent and sized up Qin Feiyang. Whoosh! At this moment, the king of Yan and the rest arrived and bowed. "Greetings, sir." Wang Hong nodded and waved his hand again. The few of them tactfully retreated to the side, their expressions extremely respectful. Wang Hong looked at Qin Feiyang for more than 10 breaths before asking, "Why is your surname Qin?" Yan Nanshan and the rest were stunned, a trace of doubt creeping into their eyes. However, Qin Feiyang's heart trembled. He tried to calm himself down and asked in confusion, "Sir, why do you ask?" Wang Hong said, "Qin is the national surname of the great Qin Empire. Your surname is Qin. Are you related to the imperial capital?" The imperial capital. Qin Feiyang's heart trembled and he smiled bitterly. "Sir, if I am related to the imperial capital, why would I be in the county of Yan?" Yan Nanshan smiled. "Sir, not everyone with the surname Qin is of the same bloodline as the emperor. You are thinking too much. Yes, my parents are just ordinary people. They have nothing to do with the imperial capital. I wish I was from the imperial capital. Unfortunately, it is just a dream." Qin Feiyang shook his head and said, "There were many people with the surname Qin in the 9 states and 18 counties. Although Qin was the national surname, it did not mean that people with the surname Qin were related to the imperial capital. Moreover, before the great Qin Empire was established, Qin was just a very ordinary surname." Wang Hong looked at Qin Feiyang for a moment and said calmly, "I am just asking. I came to the county of Yan this time because Yan Nanshan said that you have opened the 2nd level of the Gate of Potential. Is that true?" Qin Feiyang nodded. "Let me see it." Wang Hong's tone became excited. Qin Feiyang pulled open his clothes, and the black potential imprint was immediately exposed. "Good, very good. I did not expect the county of Yan to have a martial arts genius." Wang Hong was very excited. Yan Nanshan reminded, Sir, his talent in alchemy is not bad. Yes, yes, yes. I almost forgot. Qin Feiyang, go and get ready. Follow me to the state capital. Wang Hong said. To the state capital. The king of Yen and the others trembled. He was only a 9-star martial master, and he was invited to the state capital. This was the first time in the world. They could not help but feel jealous, because even they had not been to the state capital. If the county of Yen was compared to the earth, the state capital was the sky. It was a supreme honor to be able to enter the state capital. However, Qin Feiyang hesitated. He definitely had to go to the state capital, but now was obviously not the time, because he was still too weak. The most important thing was that the governor of the state capital had gone to the capital to meet the emperor and saw him with his own eyes. Although 6 years had passed and his appearance had changed greatly, what if he was recognized? If he was still alive and his talent was far better than before, some people in the capital would not let him off if they knew about it. Therefore, he could not go to the state capital now. At this thought, Qin Feiyang cupped his hands and said, I do not want to go to the state capital now. Please forgive me, sir. What? Not going? The king of Yen and the others froze. After living for so long, this was the first time they saw someone who did not want to go to the state capital. Was this kid stupid? That was the sacred ground of martial arts. It was a place that countless people dreamed of going to. Yan Nanshan said seriously, Qin Feiyang, no matter what reason you have today, you have to go with Wang Hong. Qin Feiyang sighed. Palace master, filial piety is the most important virtue. What do you mean? Yan Nanshan frowned. Qin Feiyang said sadly, To be honest, my father passed away 2 years ago. On the day of his death, I swore in front of his grave that I would not leave the county of Yen for 5 years. If the emperor knew that Qin Feiyang said that he was dead, he would definitely fly into a rage on the spot and scold him for being an unfilial son. Is there such a thing? Yan Nanshan frowned. Yes, I never lie. Qin Feiyang nodded. His face was not red, and his heart was not beating fast. Yan Nanshan looked at Wang Hong hesitantly. Wang Hong frowned and said in a low voice, If you miss this opportunity today, you'll have to rely on your own ability to go to the state capital in the future. He paused and said, I might as well tell you the truth. There are dangers on the way to the state capital. Even a combat emperor may not survive. I am not afraid. Moreover, if I can't even do this, I am not qualified to enter the state capital. Qin Feiyang said firmly. Are you sure? Wang Hong frowned. I am sure. Qin Feiyang nodded without hesitation. All right, I will wait and see. After Wang Hong said that, he looked at Ma Cheng and the others and said coldly, Yan Nanshan has told me what happened between you and Qin Feiyang. I do not want to say anything more. I only hope that you will take care of yourselves. Yes, Ma Cheng and the others bowed and replied. Chapter 202. Even the people of the state capital had declared that they would protect Qin Feiyang. It seemed that he was going to be lawless in the county of Yen from now on. Qin Feiyang was also surprised. He thought that Wang Hong would be displeased if he refused. He did not expect that Wang Hong would not be displeased at all. Instead, he sounded the alarm for the king of Yen and the others. Wang Hong asked, Has anything major happened in the county of Yen recently? Qin Feiyang's heart skipped a beat. If he told Wang Hong about Zui'an and the blood-slain palace, he would be able to settle it easily. However, before he could speak, the king of Yen was the first to speak. Thank you for your concern, but the county of Yen has been very peaceful recently. Nothing major has happened. Yan Nanshan and the others nodded. At the same time, Yan Nanshan even shook his head at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. What were these people thinking? Were they going to keep it a secret? Were they going to wait until things got out of hand? But now he could not say anything, because if he told the truth he would not only offend one person, but all the big shots in the county of Yen. Wang Hong looked at Qin Feiyong suspiciously and asked, "Do you have something to say?" The king of Yen and the others looked at Qin Feiyong with a hint of pleading in their eyes. Qin Feiyong hesitated for a moment and smiled. "I just want to ask, what is your cultivation level?" The king of Yen and the others heaved a sigh of relief. They could not help but have a good impression of Qin Feiyong. Everyone liked a sensible child. Wang Hong was stunned for a moment. Then he shook his head and laughed. "You will know my strength when you enter the state capital. Since there is nothing else, I will go back." "Farewell, sir." The big shots present bowed and said. It was as if they could not wait for this person to leave. Wang Hong did not beat around the bush. He waved his hand, and a stream of light shot out from his sleeve and into the sky. Then, under the shocked eyes of the crowd, a door of light appeared quickly. Wang Hong turned into a streak of light and shot into the door of light. The next moment, the door of light disappeared. "Whew!" After this, Big Shot left. The big shots all let out a long sigh of relief. The king of Yen took a step forward and smiled. "Qin Feiyong, thank you so much." "I'm fine." Qin Feiyong waved his hand and smiled. Manager Li chuckled and said, "In the future, please take care of me, Brother Qin." Qin Feiyong smiled bitterly. "Humph. Don't think that just because a sparrow flies to a branch, it can become a phoenix. I can let bygones be bygones, but in the future, it's best that you don't provoke the Danwang Hall." Ma Ching shouted coldly and soared into the sky with a trace of disdain. Jiahe, an elder, he followed closely behind. The red-haired old man, the king of Yen, and steward Li did not stay any longer. They soared into the sky and disappeared without a trace. Qin Feiyong retracted his gaze and looked at Yan Nanshan and the other two. He frowned and said, "Hall Master, Elder, I can understand if you continue to hide it from us. But do you know that once this matter gets out of hand, you will be punished even more severely?" Yan Nanshan said, "So, we can't let this matter continue to fester." Qin Feiyong asked, "Hall Master, do you have any plans?" "You don't have to worry about this matter. Focus on your cultivation. We will think of a way." After Yan Nanshan finished speaking, he left hurriedly with the beautiful woman and Elder Wan. "I don't want to worry about this either," Qin Feiyong muttered as he looked at the backs of the three people. Lu Hong frowned and said, "Why didn't they report it?" "They were afraid of being punished by the state government. 8 years ago, no, it should be 9 years ago now. They didn't report Zhua En's matter to the state government. If Zhua En is exposed today, the state government will definitely punish them. They can't bear this responsibility." Fatso sneered. "Fatso is right. The blood spirit elixir was banned by the first emperor himself. This is not a joke. If we can get rid of Zhua En this time, this matter will be resolved. But if we can't, then they will be punished even more." Qin Feiyong said, "I hope we can get rid of him. This way we can have an easier time." Lu Hong sighed softly. Zhua En's existence was equivalent to a ticking time bomb to them. They did not know when it would explode. Fatso asked curiously, "Boss, what was that door just now? It looked so magical." Qin Feiyong said faintly, "That is a portal. It can teleport a person from Yen City to Black Bear City in an instant. There is no such thing in the county of Yen." "That's awesome." Fatso and Lu Hong looked at each other in disbelief. "Wait, boss, how did you know? Are you really from the imperial capital?" Fatso was surprised. Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed. He shouted, "Do you have nothing better to do? Hurry up and find me the herbs for the potential elixir." "Hee, boss, you're a little guilty." Fatso snickered. Qin Feiyong rolled his eyes at him and said with a smile, "All right, stop guessing. You will know my identity when the time comes. As for now, you must remember that I'm just an orphan from an ordinary family." "Understood." Lu Hong nodded. Fatso, however, was deep in thought. Qin Feiyang glanced at Fatso and said meaningfully, people who are too smart often end up in a miserable state. Is the white-eyed wolf not back yet? Fatso smiled embarrassedly and shook his head. It's not wild enough. Why would it come back? Qin Feiyang said, when it comes back, tell it not to run around. Yen City might not be peaceful recently. The whereabouts of the people from Blood Slaughter Palace were secretive. No one knew where they were hiding. He did not want anything to happen to Wolf King. In the blink of an eye. 10 days passed. Boom! On this day, Qin Feiyang, who was cultivating by the lake, suddenly had a surge in his aura. His long hair danced in the wind, and the lake in front of him stirred up waves. After a while, the aura gradually faded, and the lake returned to its calm state. Whoosh! At this moment, Qin Feiyang opened his eyes, and 2 beams of light shot out. The excitement on his face was undisguised. 10 days! He actually used only 10 days to enter the ranks of Martial Ancestor and become a 1-star Martial Ancestor. His speed was indeed different when he did not have to copy the 6-word divine formula. One had to know, no matter how talented one was, it would still take half a year. Such a speed could be said to be heaven-defying. Fatso ran out of the attic and said with a long face, "Boss, are you going to let me live?" He was also refining the supreme grade Qi gathering pill, but he was only a 7-star martial master. It was really infuriating to compare oneself to others. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "Don't worry. When you open the door of potential, your speed will be several times faster than others." How is Ling Yunfei recently? Fatso said he has also successfully opened the first level of the door of potential and is now cultivating in seclusion. Qin Feiyang was delighted. He took out a jade box and said, "Send this potential pill to him as well. Let him open the 2nd level of the door of potential before he breaks through to Martial Ancestor." Fatty said unhappily, "Aren't you being a little too biased?" Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes and said, "How is the search for the potential pills herbs going?" Fatso said helplessly, 10 days have passed, and we have only gathered 1 set. It seems that there is not much left in the Yen County. Why don't we go somewhere else to take a look?" "Somewhere else?" Qin Feiyang was stunned and frowned. "You can't be thinking of going to another county." "That's right." Fatso nodded and laughed. "Fat Lord has asked around. Pan County is the closest to Yen County. If we go, we can reach there in 2 years at most. You can even think of that." Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes. The imperial capital was in charge of the 9 states and 18 counties, and the 9 prefectures were in charge of 2 counties. Pan County and Yen County were under the jurisdiction of the same prefecture, so the 2 counties were the closest to each other. However, instead of using these 2 years to travel, he might as well cultivate properly. Then what do you think we should do? You want the herbs and don't want to run away. How can there be such a cheap thing in the world? Fatso said. Qin Feiyang frowned. Fatso was telling the truth. After all, he still needed a lot of potential pills in the future. If he didn't think of a way earlier, he really couldn't. But he really didn't want to go to Pan County. It was troublesome. At this time, Shizheng strode to the calm Heart Lake. These days he had been outside, helping to look for Lin Chong. Qin Feiyang stuffed the jade box into Fatso's hands and hurriedly went up to him, asking, "Elder, how is it? Have you found Lin Chong?" "No." Shizheng shook his head and said in a deep voice, "The guards of the city didn't see him leave the city either. We all suspect that he might have been hidden by someone. The 2 battle emperors who joined the Blood Slaughter Palace are nowhere to be found either." Qin Feiyang frowned. Shizheng glanced at Qin Feiyang and said, "There's one more thing." "What?" Qin Feiyang was puzzled. Shizheng hesitated and said, "When you hear this, don't be too anxious." Qin Feiyang's eyelids twitched and he frowned. "What is it?" Shizheng exhaled and said, Wolf King is missing. What? Qin Feiyang's body trembled. Fatso's expression changed, and he asked, When did this happen? Yesterday, Shizheng said. Last night, the guards guarding the city saw Wolf King leave Yan City and go deep into the mountains. He hasn't come back yet, so I'm worried about his safety. Damn it, this ruffian wolf. I told him not to run around. Why didn't he listen? Qin Feiyang was furious on the spot, but he was extremely anxious in his heart. The mountains outside the city were full of fierce beasts, not to mention Wolf King. Even a battle king would not dare to set foot in there. If he didn't return for an entire night, it meant that Wolf King was most likely dead. He shuddered and hurriedly said, Fatso, remember to give the potential pill to Ling Yunfei. Elder Shi, quickly bring me to the city gate. I want to ask the guards. Shizheng comforted. Don't worry, maybe he just went crazy outside the city and forgot the time. Impossible. Although he likes to fool around, he definitely won't stay out all night. Hurry up, Qin Feiyang urged. Shizheng's heart trembled. This was the first time he saw Qin Feiyang so flustered. Without further ado, he quickly left Calm Lake with Qin Feiyang. What happened? At this time, Lu Hong jogged out of the loft, looking at Fatty in surprise and bewilderment. Fatso said, Brother Wolf is missing. Boss is going to be angry. How could this be? You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.